Hey everyone. All right, we are live, but my hat's crooked. Doot, 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 doot. Okay. Had the countdown going. Yeah, we're not really going live for another 4 minutes or so. But I'm just going to be testing some of the switches here, make sure everything is working. Because I had a little problem with it earlier, so bear with me. All right, that's our Mike and Eric view. That's our Eric only view. We don't need to worry about, oh look, Guy was the last time we had an extra guest on. Mike and Eric, Mike only. Okay, I think we're good to go. No doubt we will mention this in in just a few minutes, but we are currently having quite the snowstorm here. Yeah, I woke up this morning and it looked like we had accumulated about 8 inches in roughly 4 hours, 4.5 hours, something like that. So we're looking at a rate of just under 2 inches per hour of snow accumulation. Good thing we can still podcast. The only thing preventing this podcast from moving forward is electricity and internet. So as long as those two hold up, we're in good shape. But yeah, I'm looking out the window right now, and that's easily, that's a foot. That's got to be a foot of snow right now on our table and the stairs and the railings and the squirrels and rabbits in the backyard. No, they're okay. They're all okay. But I do worry about them because we have a mega chill coming. I mean, we're talking like minus 25 for the high with wind chill in the next few days. That's supposed to start tonight and then go into early next week, where we're looking at highs of -1, -2, stuff like that. January in the Chicagoland area. And I know that's not exclusive to us. I mean, the East Coast gets slammed every year. Massive snowstorms on the East Coast. The mountains, of course, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming. This is not exclusive to us, but gosh, we had that snow on Tuesday this week where they were calling for 6 inches of snow and businesses closed and all that. We woke up this morning and pretty much all of our entire county was just shut down. Everything was just shut down. In fact, one delivery we were expecting with UPS was actually pushed off until next Tuesday, the next available business day. And then conversely, we had a UPS delivery here at the house just like an hour ago. So I don't know why some trucks are going out, why some trucks are not going out. I just hope everybody's safe. It's dangerous driving out there right now. The wind is going to start picking up. We're going to have blizzard-like conditions here pretty soon. And as if 8 to 12 inches of snow wasn't enough, we're going to have blizzard-like conditions soon. So we've got that too. So everyone, in the area, everyone in the country. I know the UK is being hit by some snow too. Hey, stay safe. Stay safe. Don't go out if you don't have to. Okay, it is 1 o'clock. We're waiting for Eric to join us. Ooh, darn it. Darn it. I keep forgetting to hit record. But at least I started hitting record, or at least I hit record right at 1 o'clock. Woo! All right, waiting on Eric. Let's see. New start time for the live stream. If you were with us last time, you know that we are now starting the live stream at 1 p.m. Central Time on the second and fourth Friday of the month. Slight change to the episode titles. I mentioned this last time. We are now going to start. I am going to start putting the episode number in the title of the episode. I don't know why I didn't do that before. I mean, what, 16 years of doing this, and for some reason I never put the episode number. I always had it in the description. It was always in the description, but never in the title. And it just, I noticed when I was in my podcatcher, Mimer, however you want to pronounce it, that I couldn't tell what, I could see the name of the episode, but I couldn't tell what episode number it was. And with the RSS feed only giving the most recent 25 episodes, I talked about that last time too. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell where we were in the history of For Mac Eyes Only. So the episode number is going to start appearing in the title of the show. If you have feedback on that, let me know. Let me know what you think about that. Let's see, what other announcements can I make before Eric joins us? Chapter markers, yep, I'm still not on top of that. Sorry. Oh, I have had a thought. For anyone who watches this on YouTube. I was thinking about creating what I'm going to call quick clips. For Mac Eyes Only quick clips. And take segments of episode, like last episode, oh my gosh, that was a marathon episode. And there were huge swaths that I cut out when I created the audio version of the show. And not, without chapter markers, not everybody wants to go through that, that long of an episode to hear everything. So I thought, what if some of the stuff, not all, but some of the stuff that I cut out of the episode, what if I turn those into little quick clips? And I don't mean YouTube Shorts. I'm not a fan of YouTube Shorts or TikTok or any of that. And it's because I don't like the autoplay feature of it. I don't like that it repeats. It gets stuck on repeat, playing over and over again. I'm talking about just creating little short videos that I'll actually in my notes, I call it quick clips, and just take those little segments and pull them out and publish them separately. That's something you're interested in. If you are, cool. I will start doing that. If you're not, I won't. Let's see, what other things can I announce before we get on with the show today? Gosh, I think, I'm going to mention this in the show. It's in my notes to talk about this, but the next few episodes, 424, 425, and 426, are going to be migration episodes. So the topics are going to be migrating from this thing to that thing. And there's one I'm going to start with in particular. And then I might actually do a 427 migration episode too. As I was taking notes for today's show, I had an idea for 427 as a possible fourth, I guess that'd be a fourth migration episode. And that would be nice, instead of 3, we'll do 4. It'd be a good way to wrap it up. But we might do a fourth one, talk to Eric about that. But 426, which will be the second one in February, we're going to have a special guest back on again. Darren Davies, who was on last year on the show, is going to be rejoining us again for that particular episode. So that will be fun too. Oh, let's see. What else? What else do we have to talk about? All right, who purchased your Vision Pros? All the news coming from CES this week. Something I was trading text with Eric about before recording. I was just texting him like 20 minutes ago. Where is he? Where are you, Eric? Anyway, all this news coming out of CES. Everything sounds really cool. Everything sounds great. Oh, this is fantastic. I want this thing they're talking about. And then at the end of the article, it says, oh, coming second quarter 2024, coming third quarter 2024, coming fourth quarter 2024. Like, okay, well, by then I'm going to forget about it. So maybe it would be cool if some of this really neat stuff that they're announcing at CES would be available now. I know. They're gauging feedback. They want to know if they should, you know, in many cases, they're gauging feedback. They want to know if they should actually put something into production that they're showing off there. But some of the products I've been most interested in are just little accessories, little small accessories for the Mac or for the iPhone or whatnot. And I just think, oh, that'd be really cool. I could use that. I could use that thing, whatever it is. Eric brought up a new Satechi hub for the Mac Mini / Mac Studio. You know, it sits underneath it. I actually use a different hub / drive enclosure that's put out by OWC, Otherworld Computing. It's their Mini Stack STX, and I really like that one a lot. The Satechi one looks neat, and I like all the front-facing ports on it. I think that's cool. But, again, it's one of those things coming second quarter. Well, by then I'll probably forget about it. So I'll be happy with my STX still by then. I will give props to OWC for the Mini Stack STX. It is a nice little box. And when I was looking it up to send Eric a link, I noticed that they now have a second color. Mine is black. Mine's a matte black. And they now have a silver and black model, which, you know, I might have purchased that. If that were available at the time that I bought mine, I might have purchased that one. But, yeah, the black looks nice. I have them stacked up underneath each other. Yeah, makes for a neat little display. Gives me, you know, what Eric and I have talked about on the show before is that mythical, magical mini Mac Pro. What did we call it? Something like that. And my idea was, wouldn't it be cool if Apple created a much smaller Mac Pro, but with the ability to stack modules, you know, to produce additional modules that you can stack together. They'll snap together like bricks, like Lego bricks. They snap together, and you could build the machine you need. It could truly be a personal computer, a computer that you design, you build, you pay for, but that you can make it what you will. And I just thought that would be really cool. I mean, they could even do stuff like, sorry, I got a text message. I wanted to make sure it wasn't Eric. They could do stuff like external video cards, additional storage, RAID enclosures, all kinds of cool stuff. And they just snap together and you could build your own little mini tower. Well, that's essentially what the Mini Stack STX does for you. In addition to 4 Thunderbolt ports on the back, it also has internally room for a standard SATA, either SSD or traditional hard drive. In case I have an 8 terabyte drive in it, and then there's room for an M.2 Blade SSD to go in there as well. And Eric has just joined us, so let me bring him into the conversation here. Oh no. Oh no, I need to
First thing,
assign you
oh
again.
no,
There we go. Whoa.
oh no.
All
Okay.
right, let's see here.
Yeah, okay, let me do this. Let's
Oh,
see.
that works
Oh no,
too.
I guess I can't quite.
That
Can you hear
works
me?
too. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, good. Because that was the big thing. I was having some audio trouble. So, and I have to use my AirPods. Well, no, actually, no, I guess I don't because I was tying up the one audio port, but I've since switched it to USB. I'm not using the microphone that I normally use, so I don't know how it sounds. But
Yeah, it sounds fine. Let me switch over to just so I just messed with the zoom and pan on your on the side by side one here. Let me go to your main view and see what we need. Yeah, we need to adjust that a little bit too. There we go.
so you can see the door behind me. I yeah, this moving around from one Airbnb until we actually get into the house has been just enormously fun, and it's been a new thing every time. So the router in this house, you know how most routers have a limit of how many things this that can connect to the router,
Yeah,
the Wi-Fi router.
yeah. Usually it's on the
Think
order of like 100.
yeah, this one has eight, I think, because we maxed it out uh, with our phone and iPads and Mac, and so I've had to like disconnect things just to get connected here, so I can get. I'm in a bedroom right now, so I have privacy because it's kind of like one big room. I mean, it's nice and everything, and the room that I have the computer in is separate, but there's no door, so it's been just a
Well,
blast.
what if you put in your own router? If give yourself a double NAT situation
Yeah,
so that you're all
you know what? Maybe
connecting
I.
to your router, and then your router would appear as one device to their router.
You know what? I did think of that, and I should try to do that. I had initially thought of just maybe putting my router, disconnecting his router, and putting in my router because I did bring it along. But then I thought, oh, that's I know he's got cameras outside, and he's got a thermostat and stuff. So I thought, oh, that's going to mess with that. So I didn't do that. Um, but then I did think of the double NAT situation, like you just mentioned, like a bridge, and then I was kind of wondering how well that would work. But actually, maybe I should do that. I should see if I
I
can do
don't
that.
see. I don't know that a bridge would work. If you have a limit on the number of devices, a bridge would allow all your devices to appear as individual devices. You need to set it up as a
Oh,
router and let the existing router be the internet router. That needs to be,
right,
how internet comes to your router, and then your router will
right,
appear as just one device to theirs. And then all of his stuff or her stuff can stay connected to their router just fine. That's not a problem. In fact, that may
right.
be why you're
Okay.
hitting a limit because they have all this other
Yeah,
equipment connected to it. But
it is. It is. I was being facetious when I said eight. Yeah, no, but I don't. It does look like a little bit older. It's 802.11n, and it's one of these black ones with like four antennas. Almost kind of looks like a stealth fighter or something. But I my guess is it's probably like got a limit of 50 or something
yeah.
devices because it doesn't seem to be like that much that I can think of. Um,
So is it an N router or is it at least a ACE?
it's an N router.
It's an N
Yeah,
router.
it's an N router. Yeah.
So that would
So
be all the more reason to have your own router in there because then you know, you could get a more modern standard for Wi-Fi.
right,
Their
right,
router, if you're connecting with Ethernet to yours, you're going to get 100 megabits per second minimum. Well,
right.
no, that's not true. You might possibly get 10, but you'll probably get
Yeah.
100. Probably get
Right,
100.
right.
And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, maybe
right.
a gigabit, maybe a, maybe a gigabit connection, but that doesn't. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100 you're not going to saturate even the 100 megabits per second. You'd be fine.
Right. Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. And it and it's actually that would be more than my internet is anyway here because I think it's 40 meg upload and like 30 download, which is kind of you don't usually see more upload than download, but at least in the cable modem arena. But I think this is DSL, so and I can see my
Oh,
pictures all kind of pixelated.
yeah, yeah, it is. But that's all right. That's all right. The most important thing
Yep.
is that we can hear you.
Yeah. And see you. Actually,
Yeah.
that probably would be the best show right there. Just have a black, image for me, and you hear my voice, and then see you. That would be good.
Well, I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
I was planning ahead. I mentioned to folks at the beginning of the live stream that we're getting snow, man. I mean, I'm looking out there, and
Yeah.
the picture I sent you earlier was about 8 inches of snow. We easily have a
Yeah.
foot out there now, easily a foot,
Wow.
and it's coming
Wow.
down harder again now, and it's supposed to come down hard all the way through the evening, and then the wind is going to pick up, and then the frigid weather comes in, and we're talking
Did
like
the
highs of -1 and -2 on Sunday and Monday. So
so
yeah,
it's here to stay.
the snow ain't going anywhere.
No.
In fact, it's going to turn rock hard because it's a
Yeah.
wet snow, so it's going to be nasty. It's going to be nasty for a
Yeah.
few
It's
days.
actually going to cool down here in Texas about the same time. And it's going to be, well, for here, it's going to be in I think the lower 20s, upper teens overnight, and then like lower 30s during the day. So that's actually fairly cold for here. So, and I did see like up in the Great White North, like -40 below. So
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. They're
that's,
talking -25 with wind chill and stuff here, which, yay, yay. I'm just looking
yay.
forward to that.
Yay. But when I used to live in Wisconsin, and people say, "Oh, the snow, that's so pretty," and it's all. I'm like, I used to always say, "Snow is overrated." By the way, I really love that coffee cup. That is a really awesome mug. I know that's from last year's Max Stock, isn't it?
No, nope.
Isn't that?
This is one of my most recent purchases. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I I picked this up last time we were down there, and yeah, I mean, it's got that retro vibe that I was going for with Macstock, and
almost
these
the
are
same
almost
colors.
the same colors. Yeah, same colors
Yeah,
as last year's Macstock, and so it's like I gotta buy it. And I only
yeah,
found it in one shop in all of Walt Disney World. One shop had this, and I'm like, well, I gotta buy it. And I've not seen it
yeah.
since. I've not seen it since. And the
They
cast member
copied
there,
you.
yeah, the cast member there said, yeah, it just came in, and they hadn't seen it anywhere else either. So that was at
Wow.
the which resort was that? That was we were resort hopping just for fun, which is something that you can do down there, and they make it even easier now that they have the Skyliner, which is like a gondola system,
Oh, cool.
and you can hop from Hollywood Studios to Caribbean Beach to Pop Century to Epcot and to I don't know what's the other one, Riviera or something like that, and so we did a resort hop just for fun one day,
That
just to
would be
check things
cool.
out. And I believe this was the Caribbean Beach gift shop is where I found that one. And that was it. No
Wow.
other. All the other shops we went into
Didn't have it.
before and after that day didn't have it. So I'm glad I bought it.
Wow.
That's one
Oh,
thing I've
yeah.
learned. All the years I've been traveling down to Disney World, the one thing I learned is if you see something and you like it and you
Get it.
think it's super cool and you
Yes.
want it, you
Yep.
better buy it because it may not even be in that shop the very next time you go in there. even if it's a
Yeah.
day later. It may not be
Yeah.
there. It is. I mean, there's so many people there, and so many people who are in these shops that if you see something and you like it, gosh, you better buy it. You better buy it.
You better buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope. That's the truth.
And the
And
mugs. I mean,
uh,
what was this? This was like $15. I mean, it's not super expensive. So for a
and
mug,
it will be gone. I mean, it'll probably never be back.
mm,
It's just one of those things where they get stuff
yep,
in and it just never again. So if you like it, yeah, you do
yeah.
just need to get it.
We it, one more example of that very thing, and then we'll move on to the show. There was a Donald Duck mug that my daughter saw at a resort gift shop one trip, and we debated about it. I don't know if I want to get it. I don't know if I want to get it. 2 days later, we went in to buy it. Gone, completely gone. Not a one to be had anywhere. Cast member didn't know if they were going to get any more in, and we looked for, oh gosh, 2 years. 2 years we were shopping for something even similar, and finally came across one that was reasonably similar to the one that she had seen 2 years prior, and bought it on the spot, and then have not seen it again since. So it's like it's one of those things that you
Yeah.
you better get it if you
You
like it.
better
If you
get it
like it
while you
well
see it.
enough that you think you're going to use it, I should
Yep.
put it that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I will. I do. I use the mugs. I rotate the mugs like every day. I get a different mug.
Yeah. I have a old Tigger mug, coffee cup that's kind of been my favorite coffee cup forever. It just feels good in the hand, and it actually is big and holds enough, but yet it doesn't. It's not like gigantic, but it's just like kind of the perfect size, and it just works well. And again, it's something that I'm sure you won't be able to find it, with the exception on eBay or something.
And just to be clear, you did say Tigger, right?
Tigger, right?
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. One more example, then I promise we'll get on to to Apple and Mac stuff, and not Disney stuff. Although
Yeah,
I can talk about Disney stuff all day long too. But I had
yeah,
the most awesome stainless steel thermal Mickey coffee mug, and it was about that tall. One of those, what is that, 16 ounce, 16 18 ounce thermal mug, and it had a
yep.
handle. It wasn't, you didn't just hold it, it had a handle, which I really liked
Handle
about
on
it
it.
because it, hold that, or you could put your hand through it and it would help keep it from slipping out of your hand or whatever. Really love that mug, and drove off to work one day and came to a stop sign and heard thump, 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 and the mug had fallen off my car. But unfortunately, as I was coming to a stop, that was when it had fallen off, and it just happened to land on the street right in front of one of my wheels. And the mug is now flat. It is flat.
Oh my gosh,
And the pop-on lid survived, the handle survived, but the mug itself is flatter than a pancake.
flat.
And I love that mug so much I could not bear to part with it. So it's now on the floor in the back seat of my car. Um, the very car that crushed it. Um,
They're very,
it's on the floor of the car.
that is very sad. That's a sad story.
It's a sad story.
You,
And
you,
I found another Mickey thermal coffee mug, and now I only use it for vacations, but I found another Mickey thermal coffee mug, very similar, but not the same. It doesn't have the handle, the lid isn't quite as good. It's not the same, but
yeah,
it's going to have to do.
it's gonna have to. Yep,
Yeah.
it's all you can do. Yeah, and there's no way you can fix that. You can't
No.
get a dent out of metal, and you certainly can't unflatten it.
It is flat, man. Um,
Yeah, that is so sad.
It is very sad. And I just remembered it wasn't on my roof. That was a different mug that I lost off the roof of my car. This one was on the front bumper. My car is such that it's got a pretty decent sized front bumper, and I had
Right.
set it there as I was loading up my car, and that's where it had
Okay.
fallen off. When I came to a stop, the momentum of stopping the
Right.
car caused it to fall off the bumper and just happened to land right in. If it had just landed on the street, at least it would have
And
been just scuffed up. But it happened to
yeah.
land right in front of the wheel as I was coming to a stop and crush.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing you even heard it, that it especially was on your bumper and yeah.
Well, it was the sound of crunching. I mean, I knew I
Yeah,
hit.
yeah, I'm
I
sure that's what yeah,
I
that you would have heard.
I knew I hit something. I
Yeah.
didn't imagine it was my mug until I got out and realized. And then the most embarrassing
Oh,
thing is actually having to get out of your car and in front of anybody who might possibly be looking. And in a subdivision, it's not likely to be many people at all. But
right.
you know, I have to get out of my car, pick up my mug, look at it, have a brief memorial, bring it
Right.
back into the car, and drive
Stop yourself
off.
from crying.
Stop myself from
Yeah.
crying. Oh, I love that mug. I'll try to.
That's so
I should.
sad.
If I wasn't tethered to my mixer here, I'd say, "Oh, I'll go out and get it from the car," because I know
I
it's
know,
like
I was gonna say you
it's
should have a picture.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Anywho,
maybe next time you should have it, you know, bring it for show and tell next
for
time.
show and tell. Yeah, exactly. Oh, exactly. All right. All right. Well, so this is going to be our essential apps episode. Uh, Traditionally, we do this in December, but it just didn't work out to do that in December this year. So we're doing it in January, making it all the more inappropriate to call it the 11th annual one. But yes, we're this is going to be our essential apps episode, and we're 27 minutes in. 27. I'm going to just say 27:20 because I'm still going to talk for a minute. And we'll go ahead and start this. You said you've got a couple apps you brought to the table. I've got a few
Yeah.
apps I brought to the table. I know you've got a news
Yep.
story or two you want to cover, so let's get
Yeah.
going.
Sounds good.
All right. Only because I have to go out and shovel the driveway again in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That,
yeah. All right. Let me
that's
get.
I don't
Oops.
envy that.
No. It's. Why? Okay. Have you had trouble with Sonoma and being able to get the little grabber arrows to resize windows?
Sometimes.
I'm
Yeah.
going right to the edge
Uh
of this window. I am not. It didn't. Okay. I clicked and started dragging. It did not show the little arrow for dragging until after I started to drag. There, I'm
yeah.
telling you,
That
Sonoma is
I've had
so
that.
buggy.
Yep.
Sonoma is so buggy. I don't know what the heck is
You just
going
kind
on.
of you wonder what happens anyway, just that it can that sort of regression can happen. It's like, what did they do to cause that? It just seems
I don't know.
odd that what were they digging around in? That seems like such a I don't
Let,
know.
let's break a feature that's existed in Mac OS in some form or another since 1984,
Yeah.
and I'm including the Lisa
Right?
OS in that.
Yeah.
But
Well, in
yeah,
83.
83. Yeah, yeah. Let's break it. Yay. So
Let's break it. Let's mess this up.
the good news is the next version of macOS is supposed to be one of those fixer upper
Yeah.
editions.
That's what I heard.
So I'm looking forward to that because boy, Sonoma is buggy as heck.
Yep.
All right, here we go. See, I told you I was going to talk. 29. I'm going to make it now. It's 2940. Here we go. All right. In three, two, one. It's for Mac Eyes Only, episode number 423 for January 12th, 2024. The Temple of Essential Apps. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Eyes Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me to share in our 11th annual, but not really annual, list of essential apps is my For Mac Eyes Only co-host, Eric Erickson. Hey Eric, how you doing?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing good, and I'm in the actual temple of apps right here. So, as you can see, there's the gateway to the altar.
The hardest part about the Essential Apps episode every year is coming up with a new title to stick with our movie titles theme for Essential Apps. That's always the
Yep.
hardest part. And I figured, you know what? This year it's going to be Raiders. I'm going to go with
Yeah,
Raiders, and there we go. I almost
but you didn't think Raiders of the Lost Apps? You didn't,
well, it has to have essential apps. It has to have the word
it,
essential apps in it.
right, that's true.
So I thought about
Right.
that, and the other one I thought about was Claris and the Temple of Essential Apps. That started to get to be a little long. So
Yeah, yeah,
I opted for just the Temple of Essential Apps. We'll
yeah,
we'll see what next year brings. We'll
yeah.
see what next year brings. Now, remember, we do record this live on YouTube the second and fourth Friday of the month. And if you would like to come hang out, if you would like to ask questions and be part of our live studio audience, be sure to subscribe to the show at youtube.com/FMEO And if you are joining us live, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat room too. So if you have any questions or comments as we move along, be sure to preface it with a Q and we'll try to address it. Eric, before we get on to this year's Essential Apps list, I wanted to give a quick programming update. Now, I know technically, I guess I just gave a programming update talking about the YouTube channel, but next episode, we are going to begin a short series of migration discussions. And our first is going to be migrating away from Evernote. Now, the funny thing is, I actually took notes and planned out this episode before I got my renewal email from Evernote last week. And whoo boy, did you know, Eric, that they just about doubled the annual subscription from last year? I had no idea. I had no idea that this was coming.
Yeah, I didn't either. And it was not until you told me, but it kind of follows a trend that, I mean, I've seen. And well, I told you about my whole Fantastical story and how that, yeah, that was nearly doubled as well. I think it was nearly 40% they raised the price. And I just said, okay, no. And I've seen some others do that too. And I don't know if it's because of higher inflation. That was one of the things
Mm.
Fantastical said when I wrote them. So, but yeah, that's pretty heavy duty. That is, and it's hard to understand.
And, look, hey, I'm being dramatic. I'm being Mr. Dramatic, Eric, because my sub was $70, $69.99. And, they're only bumping it to $130. So 70, they're only bumping it by
Yeah,
60. It's not double. It's not double. I'm being
right,
a little too
right.
melodramatic there. But, look, this is going to happen in about 2 weeks. So for me, this migration episode couldn't have come at a better time. But the interesting thing is, I've already migrated away from them. I did this late last year and thought, hey, that would actually be a good topic for the show. And, the fact is, there are at least, and I know you have one too, but there are at least two awesome options available to you as a user, including one that is installed on every single Mac that comes out of the factory.
Yep.
So I thought that would be a good topic, and then I came up with a couple other topics for migration episodes, including, as I mentioned on the live stream before we started recording, the second migration episode of February, episode 426, is going to have our friend Darren back on the show again to talk about gaming on the Mac, and migrating as a Windows gamer to a Mac gamer. That's kind of the general gist of the
Theme.
topic for that episode. And we've been Darren and I've been trading emails for almost a year now about ideas for another gaming episode. That's what we talked about last time he was on, another gaming episode. And I said, "Hey, how about this? How about this migration idea?" And he jumped right on it. I mean, he pretty much wrote an entire term paper on it already in like just a couple days. He already took all these notes, and he's ready, man. So Darren's going to be joining us in episode 426, and that's going to be the second episode of February. So yeah, that's my quick
No, that's
programming note.
great. It's gonna be
Yeah,
really good.
yeah, and I'm kind of excited about the primary app I migrated to. I looked long and hard. There are the option,
Lots of possibility. Yep.
lots of possibilities. The option to migrate away from Evernote is made more difficult by how Evernote allows you to export your content. That's all I'm going to say about that. And we'll discuss that next time. But yeah, the ability to import that content, and then because of this whole issue of migrating away from Evernote and the difficulty, or not difficulty, but how it can be problematic to do so. Because of that, I wanted to try to move to something that made it easy to once again migrate away from if I needed to. So that's why I came up with the app I came up with. And again, yeah, I'll talk about that next time. Now, before we get on to essential apps, you had mentioned that you had a couple news stories you wanted to talk about this episode. What's on your mind, Derek?
Yeah. Well, actually, nothing. Like I said, like I mentioned to you earlier, nothing earth-shattering. But one of the things that kind of caught my eye was there was a story on. Well, there's been actually a couple stories on AirDrop, and I think we talked about that last episode, or we didn't talk about stories in specifically, but we talked about using AirDrop and everyone versus contacts and all that stuff. I think no, that was I think you were talking about a possible security flaw, but that was in the whole tap to send, or the when you hold the phones next to each other.
Yeah.
But anyway, this one AirDrop story talks about how Apple could use light to light instead of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth for AirDrop. And there's a technology out there, or I don't know if it's by a company or if it's just a tech that's available to anyone. It's called Li-Fi, Li-Fi, Fi, that uses light to transmit data back and forth. And
Hmm.
I guess apparently this would be more secure and faster than Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Now, if you remember, like the older, well, actually going back to the 90s, I think I think I had a PowerBook with infrared sensor on it. You could actually send data back and forth by infrared IR, and the Macs for quite a while came with a little infrared um, spot or sensor on them. But I think that was mainly for a remote. But I think you could also use it to send data back and forth. Unfortunately, infrared is pretty slow, and it's also really line of sight. This Li-Fi isn't supposed to be. Well, it could be line of sight, but you don't have to like aim it exactly like you do
Hmm.
with infrared.
That's what I
And
was wondering as you were describing it. Yeah.
oh yeah, so it's some sort of you know like apparently Apple's been granted a patent called optical structures, I think it is, and it's like a in directional free space optical communication systems for portable electronic devices. That's always great patent speak. But anyway, it
Yeah.
it's it's uh, it's thought that it's going to use this Li-Fi, and and that sounds terrific. I mean, it really does, and it ties into another story, which that apparently um, AirDrop, supposedly in China, they have hacked into AirDrop, and there's been security researchers that say AirDrop's not secure, and they've been telling Apple about this for quite some time.
Since
And
2019.
it,
Since 2019, they've
yeah,
been telling Apple about this problem.
right, right. Although when you read it into it further, and I don't know, maybe I don't understand all of it quite great, but when you kind of read into it, it looks like it's a you need to have physical access to the person's iPhone or be right there for this to work. And so it's kind of like a lot of these other security issues where, you know, you read into it and then you find out, oh, the person actually needs access to your computer. The person actually, what I'm personally worried about is somebody far away that I can't see remotely accessing my machine and getting into things without my knowledge and without any sort of warning or whatever, and just living on my computer or whatever. I'm not so well. I mean, I'm not saying that I should be, but I don't airdrop that much, and I probably airdrop even less in public spaces that I'm worried about somebody. And I never send. It's usually a picture or a link or some little thing. It's not like I'm sending. Here's my bank account number. Here's my you know credit card number. Whatever. Here's the secrets of the nation. I'm just, it's usually something pretty benign. So, but anyway, so it probably would be great if Apple adopted this Li-Fi sooner than later, just for the security issue alone, but also just to probably make it work really well.
Yeah.
Although,
My, go
I,
ahead.
yeah, I was going to say I I love that AirDrop is local, but I also sometimes wish that it could be over the long, especially like with your own devices. It would just be really great if you could like airdrop to your computer at home, or vice versa, whatever. I know that they've added some sort of internet type element to it. If you're transferring something over airdrop and it's really long or big, you don't have to keep it in airdrop or keep standing next to each other for it to finish. It'll like finish over the internet. They
Yeah,
did that with,
right.
I think, iOS 17 and Sonoma, which is pretty slick, but which also makes me wonder why they just can't do it, you know, like that all the time.
Yeah. So a little bit more about this airdrop issue. The core of the issue, if you will, is that theoretically someone could rather easily get your name and phone number. That's that's the vulnerability.
Right.
That during the
Yep.
transfer, your name and your phone number are also, part of that transfer. Now, the issue is that these researchers in China have said, yeah, we figured out how to intercept that information, how to intercept the name, how to intercept
Right.
the phone number. That that's actually great. This is the whole purpose of security researchers, is to come up with and discover these vulnerabilities and alert the companies to these
Right.
issues, and hopefully encourage the companies to fix them, right? So
Right.
uh, there's an article on 9 to 5 Mac, and I'll put this in the show notes.
Yeah.
They're referring to it as an airdrop crack, and that's basically what it is, because Macworld, according to this article, was able to replicate part of what it suspects was done. So we don't we don't fully understand how the researchers in China have cracked airdrop to gain this information.
Right.
But Macworld says, okay, we launched the console on our Mac and we airdropped a file to it from an iPhone, And we discovered that in the console log data, that the sharing D process is responsible for AirDrop. And that contains a dedicated subprocess called AirDrop, but several other subprocesses that were also active during the file transfer. And they found that the name of our iPhone was in one of the subprocesses, along with the strength of the Bluetooth signal. And then, of course, they said that it actually stores the hash values for the email and phone number. Now that's important because the information that we're talking about is not transmitted in the clear, it is hashed. However, it's apparently a very simple hash. They go on to say that although they are stored as hash values, they're easy to
Right.
decipher. The phone number consists of only digits, which is just unbelievable. And then for emails, they say attackers could guess the usual alias structures and then, based on that, search for possible matches in dictionaries and databases of leaked emails. So, kind of
Yeah.
traditional hacker cracker type activity here.
Yeah.
But still, the fact that it's that easy, that phone numbers are stored as only digits, that makes it so much easier to brute force than if it
Right.
were, random alphanumeric type characters.
And
So
watch it only be
anyway,
like 10 digits too.
yeah, 10 digits, exactly. So apparently security researchers have warned Apple about this for years, going back to 2019, at least 2019, it says. And yeah, they suspect that one of the reasons, I didn't read this article in depth, I'm just kind of rereading it as we're talking here. They suspect that one of the reasons that Apple is not jumping on a more secure version of the AirDrop protocol is it wouldn't be backward compatible. So they would
Right.
be
It wouldn't
lopping
work with the older
off,
phones.
yeah, entire generations of older devices that can't run the latest version of iOS or macOS. So yeah, um, it makes sense
Well,
that Apple doesn't want to break that. But if it's something that is in the wild now, because the information about it has been made public, well, we'll probably need to accept that this change is going to come sooner than later. I would hope.
yeah. Although, is it one of those things where, and I'm being a little facetious here, but is it one of those things where Apple's not worried about it, so neither should you?
Well,
Like if, like,
yeah,
apparently they, they've known about it. Somebody's told them about it for quite some time, and um, yeah, but again, I don't want my phone number leaking out there either. And I don't want
yeah.
my. It does almost seem like it might be something that they could remedy fairly easy by making the hash stronger. You know, what are
You
they
would
called?
you would
Salting the
think
hash, adding some stuff
you
in
would
there
right,
that,
yeah.
yeah, that
You
it wouldn't be easy enough so people can pull it out. It's just gibberish. That I don't know. I again, it might be some sort of thing that still the older device. I don't know. Wouldn't be
yeah.
able to
Well, I
benefit
think
from that either.
boom, you just hit it right on the nose there, Eric. It's the older
Yeah,
devices. They can
yeah.
change the algorithm that they use. They can, according to the article, apparently a new protocol was proposed to Apple. Um, it was proposed by or a different researcher, Alexander Heinrich at TU Darmstadt, who back in 2021 actually told Apple that they discovered two design flaws in the underlying protocol. It allows attackers to learn phone numbers and email addresses of the sender and receiver, by the way. And Apple responded to him, but didn't fix the issue. And this proposed solution, Heinrich is calling private drop. Well, again, adopting a new way of hashing or encoding that information is going to break all the older devices. So, yeah, you absolutely hit it right on the nose. That's why Apple's not doing it, and possibly why they're not rushing to it. But again, if this is out there in the wild, they're they're going to have to do something about it. They're just going to have to.
Right. It seems like too. It seems like also that they could do something to remedy the older devices, like put in, like you said, either change the encoding, change the algorithms, the hash value, and then for the newer phones, newer devices after a certain point, and then the older ones send out a small update that turns off AirDrop or says use it at your own risk, something like that, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah.
The other thing I was kind of wondering about too is that AirDrop is pretty local. I mean, it works off of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. I think it needs Bluetooth maybe to connect, set up the. Well, I suppose once Wi-Fi is turned on, it probably expands it somewhat. But I'm just wondering, like, do the people need to be right next to you, holding some sort of thing, to little receiver to pick up your AirDrop info, or can they stand, a ways away? I don't know. It and you don't know when people are going to do an AirDrop. It's not like, you know, I mean, you might make 50 phone calls a week, but never do an AirDrop. So
Yeah.
it is one of those things where I don't know.
Well, there is another article linked to within the 9 to 5 Mac article. I'll just link to 9 to 5 Mac and allow
Yeah,
folks to dig
that's what I
into
got.
this as much or as little as they want to.
Yeah,
The thing is, when I heard it's the phone number and name, I was like, oh, okay,
yeah,
cool. I mean, that's to me, that's not that big of a deal because apparently
right.
somewhere
Like,
along the line, my mobile number that I never give out to anyone is
yeah,
out there. I mean, how else do I get these spam calls? Robo dialers, and
right,
so there is a list or lists that contains my number.
yeah,
My name is already public record, and it's not exactly
right,
a difficult name anyway. There's at least
right,
two other Michael Potters in this region alone that
right.
I know of, and I'm also putting it right here on the screen. So it's not, my
Yeah,
name getting out there is not a big deal. It's already out there. My
right.
phone number is apparently
Yeah,
already out there. And yes, I do acknowledge that it is robodialers and stuff, but there are lists that these
yeah.
numbers are out
Oh,
on.
yeah,
And
for
and a
sure.
lot of these lists come from the mobile phone companies. There's somebody
Yeah,
who used to have my number, and keep in mind I've had this number for well over a decade. There's somebody who used to have my number, and I still to this day get texts for them. Unbelievable. Really, not
yeah.
once in over a decade has anyone responded to you, and yet you are continuing to send text messages to this
Texas.
person who
I know.
allegedly owned this number at some point. And if I said, oh, you know what, I'm going to get a different number because I keep getting these texts, it's just going to happen
You'll,
again.
again, you're going to get something else. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm not too terribly worried. I know my concern about privacy is a lot different than other people's concern about privacy. And there are some things that should be private and some things that I just accept are public information
right,
or
right.
have become
Yep,
public information throughout the years. So I often, when
yep.
I give someone my mobile number, I often refer to it as my super secret squirrel number because I do not
Yeah,
publish it anywhere.
right.
So
Yep.
yeah, and yet
No,
and yet it's out there.
it's out there. And it's same with me. I have the same thing. In fact, I've got a Robo Killer app just for that, just because I get, uh, yeah. And I never gave out my number. You know, I, yeah, or my email addresses for that matter. And somehow I get all this junk.
Yeah,
Somehow these places that I've never even heard of, let alone did business with, have my email address and apparently have my phone number. So,
right.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
always an email address that like it could be an alias. It could be an alias email address that you never ever give anywhere except for that one company you created the alias address for. And now suddenly you're getting all
Yeah.
this spam. And you're like, well, I know how they're making their money,
Yeah, I know.
right?
I've actually used that just to see if it's been sold. Yeah. Yeah.
Sidebar, real quick, for anyone who uses Gmail or any Google Mail related system, so Google Workspace or Gmail or any of that, for those who don't know, you can very easily create an alias by just adding a plus and then
Yep.
the alias that you want to create after your, what do you call it, handle, your name, your, so before the at gmail.com. So let's say your email address is Teddy the
An
Wonder
actual
Lizard.
email.
Yeah, Teddy the
Yeah.
Wonder Lizard at gmail.com. Well, if I wanted to create an alias just for Mac Eyes only, I could make it Teddy the Wonder Lizard plus, put a plus, FMEO at gmail.com. And that will be delivered to my inbox. Anything after the plus is basically ignored by
Of.
Google
Yep.
and allowed to pass through to your inbox. So if you need to give out your email address to somebody, and there are various ways of doing or creating aliases with almost every major email service out there, including Apple's. It's built right into your Mac and your iPhone and everything to create aliases. But if you want to do it with Gmail, you can just do plus and then the name of the alias at gmail.com, and that instantly creates an alias for you. Now, the other thing that you can
Yeah.
do too is you can put periods in your name. So if using Teddy the Wonder Lizard, it could be Teddy.the.wonder.lizard. Google completely ignores dots in email addresses. So not no other service does that to my knowledge. Almost every other service I can think of acknowledges the dots, but Google ignores them. They've made a conscious decision to ignore dots in email addresses. So another way
Yeah.
to create an alias would be to insert a dot, somewhere in your
Right.
address. It could even be in a place unique to that company you're handing it to. They're going to register and store your email address the way you gave it to them. But when they send you stuff and when they sell off your email address and you start getting stuff, you know where it came from. And
Right.
you can then opt to create a filter or just cut it off entirely, block it entirely if you no longer want to receive email from them or from the myriad companies they've sold your name off to. So,
I don't know about the dot, but the plus sign thing is something that Apple does as well,
oh, really?
iCloud, or
Okay.
even when it was .Mac. I wonder if that's sort of a across the board thing. I don't know, but the dot thing, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the fact that you mentioned the plus thing too, because I didn't know Google did that, but the fact that Apple does it as well, um, it also kind of makes me wonder if other places know about this, so spammers will just take off that everything after the plus and after. Like if
Well, they
they
could.
get a hold of that, but it's still nice for filtering. So if you do give that out to somebody or some company or whatever, and they're actually using the plus and everything, that you could say anything that comes with the plus, blah blah blah,
Yep.
move it to this folder,
Yeah.
run this rule, do whatever. That's kind of a nice thing. Yeah.
It is a nice thing. And now I'm wondering if I should even bother because you're right. Spammers could just put a regex filter on it and say everything between the
Right.
plus and between and including the plus, but before the at, just
Yeah.
remove. They could do that, but
Remember.
honestly, I think it's too much work for them. I really think it's too
You're
much
right.
work.
Oh, yeah. I don't
Anything,
think they're that. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
it's not that they don't know how to do it or that they couldn't
Yeah.
figure it out, but it seems in casual observation, purely casual observation through 20 years of managing mail servers and setting up Google Workspace accounts for clients and my own mail servers and all that kind of stuff. Casual observation is that spammers don't want to spend more money than is absolutely necessary to do
Right.
the thing that they are trying to do, and that's sell you stuff. Or,
Yep. Yep.
and I'm talking about spammers specifically, not fishers, not any of the other, but spammers specifically don't want to spend the money. And I think the couple cents it would take to process and filter out the pluses and all that, I think that's just too much work for them. I don't think they would do it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It,
And
that might cut
I
into the billions of dollars that they make every year off of people. And,
right.
it might cut 50 cents into it. And oh no, can't do that. We got to make that 50 cents,
No,
you
I
know?
think
So that,
I think you're totally right.
that's my gut feeling is they wouldn't spend the time, money, or effort to do it because it's just too much work. It's much
I
easier
think
to just
that
buy a list or steal a list and start spamming
right.
people and move on and not worry about what the addresses are.
Yeah. I think that and they don't care.
And they don't care.
It as long as the email gets there and somebody it's a real email, it gets whatever, they don't care. I'm sure they don't.
Yeah.
Just for various reasons, just like you said, they don't want to spend the money. They don't, no, no, you're right. You're right about that. I totally agree.
Okay. Any other news you want to cover this week?
Yeah, just the one thing that we talked about last week, which was Apple's case to keep selling the Apple Watch. There was a couple of things the ITC said is weak and unconvincing. So um, they they got banned, and then Apple appealed, and the appeals court temporarily lifted the ban. So right now, I think, and since then, Apple's been able to sell the watch, but I think it's all going to come to head. I want to say on January 15th. And so there's arguments being made, and um, the ITC. There was one sentence that the ITC said, and they said, "quote unquote," Apple's arguments amount to little more than indisputably adjudicated infringer, requiring permission to continue infringing the asserted patents. So they're basically saying that it's not it's indisputable, and it's already been judged, and Apple's definitely been infringing on these patents, and all Apple's saying is yes, let us continue selling this watch so we can continue infringing on these patents. I mean, that's what the ITC is saying. And I normally don't get all too much whatever, with the ITC and stuff, but I tend to think they're right in this case, and I think Apple's kind of, it's just like, just make it right. How much it should have never gotten this far. I think that's kind of my thing.
Well,
But anyway, I thought that statement was funny.
well, that's funny and it's hilarious, even more so when you consider how many billions and billions and billions of dollars Apple has in the bank.
Right.
It you
Yes.
to basically have been proven to have infringed upon this patent and
Right.
then argue to continue to sell and continue to infringe. Just pay them. Just pay them.
Yeah.
Just buy the license, do whatever you need to do,
Right.
because it'll be a drop in the bucket. You can move on. And then if you want to make
Right.
changes and not pay them anymore, make the changes in the Apple Watch
Yeah.
10 or, whatever. Just pay them.
Just pay him. And not only that, Apple has the money to buy Massimo. I have no doubt.
Well, they
It's
do.
like,
They do. But yeah,
yeah. No, I know. It just,
maybe that's what
yeah.
Massimo's going for. Maybe that's what they want.
Maybe that is. Yeah, maybe that's what they want. Yeah.
I think there's a few steps that have to. I don't know if Apple can just cut them a check and say, "Okay, we now own you." But
You're right.
in
Right.
fact, I
Right.
know they can't. I know they can't. Don't
Right.
send letters. I know they can't.
Right.
But yeah, it just make it right. Make it right.
Yeah, exactly. No, just make it right. Just fix it. Don't do that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, you're going to send me links
Well,
to
that
those two stories. I have the link
yes,
to the 9 to
yep,
5 Mac story. You're going to send me links to those other two stories, and we're going to make sure that those are all in the show notes.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, Eric, I think one of our all-time favorite episodes, or at least it's one of my favorite episodes, is our Essential Apps show. And
Yeah, that is
last
definitely
year, yeah, last year was actually our first one in something like 7 years. It had been a really long time since we had done one. We had done a different type
that's
of apps
right,
episode in 2018, if I remember, but we hadn't done one until last year since like 2015. But
right, right.
we are
That's
back
right.
again. We're back again this year for our 11th list of essential apps. And I don't know about you, Eric, but I looked at last year's list and I said, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah,
That's pretty much it. But that said, I definitely wanted to switch things up a bit this year, and I wanted to throw in a few new ones that, well, if mentioned on the list in the past, it's been a while. So, um, I'm pretty sure I have a different take on what makes an essential app than you two, Eric.
I'm
But
sure. Yeah,
I really think that what makes our list a good one for everyone who's listening, whether you're new to the Mac or an old fogey like us, um, I feel that what makes our list a good one is that there's a little something in there for everyone. And I am
yeah.
not ashamed to admit that I pick up at least one new app each year thanks to your list. Now,
Oh,
before we get started, I'm going to take a second to share what makes an app essential to me, why they're on the list, and why you should consider adding them to your Mac. Now, I said I think I have a different take on this than you, Eric, but for me, an essential app is one that I find myself turning to again and again and again. One that's so ingrained in my life that when it's gone, I'm usually scrambling to load it up to
yeah,
install it as quickly as possible so that I can get back to work again. In other words,
yeah.
these are apps that, if I had my way, would ship with every new Mac that's leaving Cupertino. Now, I know there's one on my list that Apple would never ship with Macs, but that's kind of, a lot of these are just little tiny, tiny apps that I find indispensable. And gosh, they would be amazing if they were just part of Mac OS.
Right.
Now, what I think folks are going to notice, though, is that many of these apps are apps that augment the tools that I'm already using. And I know Eric, and I know listeners know that I like those native Mac OS tools. I like Calendar, I like Contacts, I like Reminders, I like Notes. There are two notable exceptions to that, but if it ships with Mac OS, I'm probably using it. Now, I think the hardest part about coming up with a list like this is narrowing it down to only 5 apps. And that's exactly why I brought a pocket full of bonus apps with me, too. You know, just in
And
case. Just in
and I had a
case.
truckload
And you have a
of
truckload.
apps.
But
Bonus.
how about
Yeah.
you, Eric? What makes an app essential to you?
Oh, I think you said it. You nailed it on the head. It's you might with what you said is pretty much exactly the same. Now you might have it even more or less like narrowly defined. Like when you said I can't hardly use a computer without it. Um, I can probably use a Mac for a little while without it. Obviously, if it's somebody else's Mac, but
Well,
it's
sure.
a sort
Yeah.
of app that I set up a new Mac or get a new Mac, and I've whether I've especially if I've done a fresh install and I'm just gonna go ahead and just install apps as they come. These are the first apps that I install within the first day because because muscle memory and everything else goes back to using them, or I need and I've actually done this a number of times with the Mac where I've started out and I've just installed the basic thing, and then the other apps that I use, and I try to see, especially the background apps, how many that I actually need. I'm not going to go ahead and install everything and get this thing
Oh, yeah.
loaded down with a whole bunch of apps. And what do I actually need and use? And then ultimately, I'm always installing these apps over and over again. And I'm like, yeah, I can't get by without it, sort of thing.
That is a really good point. We talk about these apps and we talk about loading them up on every Mac, but it's a really good idea to go through your app folder every once in a while. In fact, as I was going through my applications folder just to make sure I didn't miss anything, especially for my pocket full of bonus apps, as I was going through making sure I didn't miss anything, I was noticing apps in there that I haven't touched for ages, ages. And I wondered, do I really need this? Or sometimes the question is, what the heck is that? I don't even know what that is. At some point, I put that on my Mac and I have no idea what that app is.
What is this anyway?
And the
That's all.
interesting thing is, one of my picks this year is an app that's going to help with that. So, um, yeah.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
cool. So, for our 11th edition of Essential Apps, I think what we're going to do, or at least what I'm going to try to do, is pick apps that meet those criteria, the criteria that you set out, the criteria that I set out, apps that can help not only the experienced Mac user, but also apps that make the Mac computing life of someone who's new to the Mac a bit easier. So, no matter what your experience level, I hope that these apps are going to make your life easier too. So, Eric, what is your first essential must have app on your list this year?
Um, there's probably a number of apps that could go for a tie on um, this particular one. However, there's definitely one that I keep going back to, and it's going to be the same probably that I've said for the last umpteen years. I'm sure I said it back in 2015, and that is at Launch Bar. And it
Mm,
probably definitely would come down to just generically some sort of app launcher. Um, However, Launch Bar is so much more than that, especially for me. Now, there are other alternatives to that, including Spotlight. And Spotlight does an admirable job. And it's something that I turn to when I'm using somebody else's Mac to help them with something or do whatever. I'll just go right to Spotlight, and the keystrokes are the same. So I always have to change Spotlight's keyboard shortcut because Launch Bar actually existed prior to Spotlight, and it was always Command Space. And so
oh, okay.
since
I didn't
then,
know that.
I've always continued. I think actually Launch Bar came over from Next Step, and I'm not totally positive, but I think it goes back even that far.
Wow.
But they've really enhanced it through the years, and I've kind of said before too that I think Spotlight has some Launch Bar envy because they've even sort of changed the way it looks, including to be kind of that. Spotlight now looks like that center bar in the middle, and that's the way Launch Bar had looked as well. And prior to that, Launch Bar just kind of came down from the menu bar, this little, and you could still do that tiny little menu thing. And prior to that, Spotlight kind of had a little magnifying glass and did the same thing. But um, the thing is, what I like about Launch Bar, besides just launching apps, is the fact that you can go through your entire system, dig through folders, act on files in whatever. You can select multiple files, and you can send, you can say, well, I'm going to copy all these files from this folder to this folder, or from this folder to this drive. And, you can select them all within Launch Bar, hit the tab button, find the destination you want to put them there, and it'll actually pop up. Do you want to copy? Do you want to move? Do you want to make an alias? Do you want to make a hard link? Do you want to make a absolute link or relative? All these different options, which is you know really nice in and of itself. They also it does a clipboard history, which again, there's tons of apps that do that. However, the clipboard history is just really easy to access and manage and do whatever. Um, and when I was talking to you about with LaunchBar too, is when you can go through folders, and the nice thing is where it doesn't, the Mac Finder doesn't really have this sort of filtering system, within a window. If you have a bunch of files within a window, you can use Spotlight to search within that particular folder or window that you have up. But LaunchBar, you can go into that folder and you can just start typing as the name of, or partial name of a file, and it doesn't matter if it starts or begins or ends or whatever, wherever. So if you just kind of know, or you want to make it easy on yourself, let's say the date is in the name of the file, and so you say you can type in 01-07 because it's going to be the 7th or whatever. It'll find that particular file. It'll search the entire name and basically parse through it, so you don't have to type in the whole name. And it's just, like I said, there's a lot of really wonderful attributes about it. There are now there are alternatives to it, and Alfred's been one that's been there, and I've tried that out. And Raycast is a new one that I've also tried out. And Raycast actually, outside of, I guess, maybe having a subscription, although you can use quite a bit of it for free, is has been really good. It's been one of those things where I think it's probably been the only one that I've personally used that it's given LaunchBar a little bit of a run for its money. Alfred is really good. The one thing about LaunchBar, and this is also not true about Raycast, is that it really seems to be made for speed. It seems like they have tried to minimize the number of keystrokes you have to do to carry out an operation, whereas with Alfred and even Raycast, that's not always the case. It seems like you always seem to have to hit more keys, and now I can't give you a great example, but it's just, and again, it's all what you're used to. But I've tried out both Alfred and Raycast for probably at least a month each, or a month and a half, and then I just ended up going back to LaunchBar because there was just things that LaunchBar could do. And even though both of those apps have some really nice advantages and really nice things about them, it just was something that I felt that I still liked LaunchBar better. Now, the one thing that I have noticed is that, and I think I've said this to you too, LaunchBar has not had a major update since 2014,
Oh, wow.
and some things have been kind of slow in getting there. So this company is OB Dev, and they also make Little Snitch, which I
Little
think they've been
snitch,
really,
yeah.
and so I even wrote to them one time and never got a response. But I'm like, are you guys giving up on LaunchBar? What's going on? They do keep coming out with minor updates to keep things working, and they did add some stuff to it lately. But I don't know if they're, maybe they're looking at Raycast and stuff coming out and maybe thinking, oh, we need to make some improvements, we need to try to add some things to it or not. I don't know, but still, LaunchBar works, and it works great, and it's still a terrific thing, and I think it's probably one of the better ones. Again, um, the one of the things that it does really quickly off the bat that you can do in Alfred and you can do in Raycast, but LaunchBar kind of does, is just, if you want to start searching for just a file on the system, you can tell LaunchBar what you want to index and not index, and you can do that to an degree with a Raycast and Alfred, but you either have to kind of go to the folder where that file is to go find it, or you have to go do a special search for files mode, like in Raycast. And I just like the fact that I can just do it, within LaunchBar and not have to think about it.
Well, that's huge. And one of the things that again, I mentioned this earlier, Every time I hear your list, and I know you've mentioned LaunchBar in the past, but there's always something seemingly new with LaunchBar that you mentioned that I didn't know about before. And that filtering of files within a Finder window, it would be huge, absolutely huge,
Yeah.
without having to do a search. And you know what? I mentioned last time how disappointed I was that we can no longer, when we were talking about the tweaks on the Mac, I said I no longer make tweaks to Spotlight because you can't make tweaks to Spotlight anymore. They
Right.
stopped giving you the ability to reorder how the Spotlight search results come up. And
Right.
that is an incredible disappointment to me because as I use Spotlight, and this happened to me at least 2 or 3 times this week, as I use Spotlight and I'm actually legitimately trying to find a file on my Mac, I have to slog through all these other search results from all these other things that Apple thinks are far more important than files on my computer
I know. Yeah.
before I actually get to Finder results. And even then, they don't seem to be as accurate as they used to be. I
Yeah.
will search for a file by letters I know are in that file name, and it won't come up. It will not come up. And I cannot figure out why. So I almost always say show in Finder. And then more often than not, I have to end up doing a new Finder search. And
Yeah.
it's like, yes, they may have Launch Bar Envy, but I almost kind of wonder if Apple hasn't given up a bit on Spotlight because
That's
it
about like,
just
yeah, you
is.
kind of,
It's a great app launcher. That's about it.
yeah,
That's what I use it for. And to your point, yes, it does show up in the middle of the screen by default now, but I always click and drag it up to the top right corner where I believe Spotlight should exist. That's just
it
it's
should
like
exist.
the
Yeah.
dock has to be on the bottom of the screen. I'm sorry for
And the
those,
menu part.
left
Yep.
and right screen
Yep.
people. I know you love it that way. The dock needs to be on the bottom, and the darn spotlight window needs to be in the top right of the screen. Sorry. So
Yeah.
the fact that I can click and drag it up to the corner is amazing. So launching apps and the ability to move the window are the two best features of Spotlight. Otherwise, it stopped working well for finding files. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Even when I know the exact or a good chunk of the exact file name, it will not find it. So
It, it
I'm
it has
disappointed.
gotten really buggy
Yeah.
because I for whatever reason now in my wife's Mac, um, the launch part isn't working to launch an application
Mm.
because I've used it to do that, and I've even went through into the Spotlight, control panel. It doesn't seem to matter. And on my machine, it, we were talking about that where you could say, when you open up Spotlight, you could have it search the whole Mac or just the folder that you're in. Well, the folder that I'm in doesn't seem to work because I end up having to, I know the file's there, but Spotlight doesn't find it. It
Spotlight doesn't
doesn't
find
find
it.
anything.
Yep. Yeah,
And
that's
then
the
I go to
problem I'm
the
having.
search the Mac and then it finds it. And
Yep.
so, in fact, what we were talking about with LaunchBar and searching and filtering, I've actually done this with a library when I was looking for preferences and other. When I went into the preference folder and when I went into the application support folder, but because I was having trouble with Final Cut, and I finally just went into the library and started blowing away Final Cut preferences and other files in there, and I
Oh.
uh, went into the preferences folder, and you can like go into a particular folder window, and then Command Space to get Launch Bar, and then Command G will bring that folder into Launch Bar, the one that you're actually looking in that window. And so from there, I typed in Final Cut, and it'll list all the Final Cut preference files, and I can just delete them right in Launch Bar. And ultimately, that's what I had to do. I was getting this spinning rainbow wheel of death, and it was, driving me bonkers. And then once I did that, it fixed the issue. But anyway, just another use of Launch Bar, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean every time you describe it, I think you just kind of, whether consciously or unconsciously, pull some other neat new feature about it out and mention it, and makes me think, gosh, I really need to give it another try.
You need to look at it. Yeah.
One of the things that I try to avoid, if at all possible, and if anybody sees my menu bar, they'll know that this isn't apparently I'm not able to be successful at this, but I try to minimize the number of apps I use that require yet another menu bar icon.
Yeah, me too.
And if I recall, Launch Bar puts an icon up there
It
when it's
doesn't.
running. It doesn't anymore.
No,
It used to put like an
it doesn't.
LB up there, I thought.
No, um, it used to run a proper app rather than running in the background, and that drove everybody nuts because you didn't want to have to like Apple tab or Command tab through, which I use and see Launch Bar running. But they've since made it a background only app. But no, it does not have its own little menu up there. Um, at least
Okay. Well, that's
At
good.
least I don't. I don't think that I don't think I've fussed with any preference because I am like you. I don't want another one of those. In fact, I use Bartender to kind of shove them off to the side. Some of these things. So, but no, it doesn't. There is an app, however, I have in my essential apps that does do that. And when I talk about that, I'll mention that. So, but yeah,
Ah, yes. And I do have
but
an app in my bonus apps that I've only just started to take a look at that works very similarly to Bartender. But before I get to that, I will get to my first pick. This first pick is not new to the Essentials app list. In fact, I'm pretty sure I mentioned it last year. In fact, I know I mentioned it last year because one of our listeners wrote shortly after and said, wow, I didn't even know that app existed. That's exactly what I was looking for. And they started using it too. You know, I I've always liked Fantastical. I like BusyCal too. I think they're both great calendaring apps. But if we go back to what I said earlier, I like to use the native apps. I really think Apple's calendar app is great. I have no problem with it at all. I love how well it's integrated into the system. I love how well it works with disparate services like Google Workspace or Gmail or Microsoft 365 or Yahoo or what have you. I don't use it with Yahoo, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
It any internet service you can add to your Mac under system settings can, for the most part, interact with Calendar. I love that.
Elder.
And
Yep.
Calendar has just gained more and more functionality throughout the years. And even though everything is broken out into a separate app, contacts, calendar, reminders, notes, unlike the monolithic horror that is Outlook, even though it's all broken out into separate apps, I don't mind that. I think that that's a great way to work, and I've come to really appreciate that. And to this day, I wonder why Microsoft has not done the same thing with Windows. It's nearly impossible to add an internet account to Windows and have it
With
just work with a calendar built into Windows, to have it just work with contacts, to have it just work with email. Why? Because of
yeah,
Outlook.
yeah,
That's why. It's not hard to do it
yeah. No,
with
you're right.
it's not hard to do it with Linux. It's absolutely
Yeah.
not hard to do it with the Mac, but it's hard to do it with Windows. Okay, soapbox aside, Fantastical always served one very important purpose for me: to put a little tiny calendar in my menu bar. That's it. That was the whole reason I purchased Fantastical. As stupid as that sounds, the entire reason for Fantastical's being on my Mac was always the little menu bar icon. That was it. And then they had to go and improve things. And good on them. They made a very nice calendaring application. BusyCal
Yeah.
has too. In fact, BusyCal has made a very nice menu bar app that didn't
Yes.
exist before. So they kind of like flip flopped. Like Fantastical had the menu bar app and then went to the full calendaring, and BusyCal had the full calendaring and then went to the menu bar app.
Menu bar app. Yep.
But the fact remains, I have to have this full calendaring app installed just to get the menu bar. I just want the menu bar.
Right.
That's it. A nice quick way to pull up my calendar, to see what's coming up for the week, to jump ahead a couple months, whatever. It's a really nice feature of Fantastical, and I love it. But it's too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
Way more than I need. And yes, I know there's the little widgets that you can put in your notification center or now on your desktop, and that's okay. The calendaring widgets
Right.
don't give enough information for me,
Yeah.
whereas the
No.
Fantastical one does. Well, all that aside, Fantastical and BusyCal are great. Check them out if you want something like that. But if you use the calendar app, Apple's own calendar app, and you want something similar for your menu bar, and you don't feel like paying whatever it is you pay to get Fantastical's menu bar app, which I'm fortunate to be locked into a perpetual license for that, so I'm okay because the only thing I need is the menu bar app. Um,
Right. Right.
but I discovered a fantastic little app, absolutely wonderful, from Mowgli, Mowgli.com, and it's called ItzyCal. And ItzyCal does exactly what I need. It puts a little menu bar app in my menu bar. Sorry to be
Yep.
redundant. That not when I click it
That.
shows the current month, and underneath shows all the upcoming events, and you can specify how many or how few you want to show there. It does a good job of allowing you to change the theming of it. So, for example, as we talked about last episode, I like dark mode for certain apps, and I like the dark mode for ItzyCal, but I don't necessarily want dark mode for the Finder, that kind of thing. And ItzyCal
Right.
does a great job of allowing me to set it to a dark mode while the rest of my Mac is in the light mode. So ItzyCal is really what Fantastical used to be. And best of all, it's free. It's a free little
Yeah.
app. It doesn't do any more or any less than what I need. And this, if you go back to my definition of essential apps, fits that definition perfectly. Yes, I mentioned it perfect. I don't know what I was going to say there. Um, yeah, I have no idea what I was going to say. That's going to be an edit point in the show. But um, it it is a simple app. It does one thing. It is an app. I always teased Brian when he was on the show, and he would talk about these different apps that he loved. I would always say, "Oh, those are one-trick pony apps, Brian. You don't need a one-trick pony app." Well, this is a one-trick pony app, and he's
Yeah.
laughing. He's laughing and laughing as he's listening to this right now because a couple of the apps I'm going to mention today are one-trick pony apps. So, see, I'm I'm in your corner now, Brian. And ItzyCal is one of those one-trick pony apps. Uh, the neat thing about it is, Fantastical, you actually have to set up your internet account separately with it. ItzyCal just picks them up. It just picks them up from your Mac settings, which is wonderful. Um, I don't know what else to say about it. It's just a great little app. The one thing I wish it would do that Fantastical does really, really well, I might add, and Apple's Calendar does really well, is natural language input. The one thing I can do with Fantastical that I cannot do with ItzyCal, and I can't complain too much about this because of the price I paid for it,
Yeah.
is natural language input. So I can't add an event and say, meeting Thursday at 10 o'clock
Right.
and then
Right.
add that. It's much more literal than that. It is in that sense a bit of a throwback calendaring app in that you have to be a little bit more specific when you're adding an entry to the calendar. But for the most part, I don't use it for that. It,
It
it's
it
it's a
doesn't have a
shame that
language parser.
yeah, it's a shame that doesn't exist. But on the other hand, I personally don't miss it. If that's something that's important to you, then you're going to need to either get in the habit of entering your calendar events within the calendar app itself, have that up and running, which is something I don't always want to do, but you're going to have that up and running, or use something like Fantastical, which does a really good job of that.
Yeah, and BusyCal does a pretty good job of that. Actually, a really
It
good
does.
job too.
It
I
does. It does.
it and Fantastical actually, that's kind of what put it on the map. I mean, the fact that it had a little menu bar calendar, but then you had the natural language thing right in there from the beginning. Um, so it's kind of a unique Mac app actually in that
Yeah,
regard.
it really was.
Um,
It really was.
yeah,
And to their credit, they decided that it was worth the investment to build it up into a full featured calendaring app. Um, and cool, but it's
yeah.
not what I needed personally. So I went for the one trick pony, Itzycal, and I love it. I love it. And I'll have a link for that in the show notes as well. It's Mowgli.com, and that's two I's at the end of Mowgli.com/Itzycal, Itsycal, Itzycal.
The what was I thinking of? And you turned me on to that when my whole Fantastical issue, and I really liked that as well. But then I kind of wanted more because I generally don't use the built-in calendar, although I should. I wonder, but and so I ended up using BusyCal, but it ItzyCal actually there was some really neat things about it too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if I didn't have BusyCal and some and another thing, I definitely probably would use that, and I certainly would recommend it to anybody. It's a great little app.
The funny thing is, on my other Mac, just to my right here, I have Fantastical, BusyCal, and Itzycal all running on it.
All right, that's awesome.
And I honestly, I don't really need BusyCal. I don't use BusyCal that much. I do like BusyCal. There's something about the interface
Yeah.
of it that just it doesn't sit as well with me as some of the others. But BusyCal's
No,
great.
nope. You're totally right. Yep.
And if you're looking for one, cool. That's a really good one to look at, and possibly a really good alternative to Fantastical if you're looking for a paid calendaring app. They do things a little bit differently. What BusyCal does
They
is
do.
it's kind of a quasi subscription. It's a subscription that's not a subscription. In other words, you pay for a year's worth of updates, and after that year is up, you can continue using it. You just don't get updates.
Right. Yep.
Now they're very generous, and as I found out, if you fail to renew, they'll allow you to renew at the discounted rate even a year or two later. So that
Yeah.
is actually really great of them. It's very generous of them, and they don't say, "Oh, well, you didn't renew, so you got to buy it full again." They don't do
Yeah.
that. No, you can renew at the discounted rate whenever you're ready to, and when you're ready to get those updates. Fantastical, if I understand correctly, has switched entirely to a full-on subscription.
So yes,
And
and then they
to
raise their price.
Yep, and they
Yeah.
raised their price, and to continue using it, like I said, I lucked out into a perpetual subscription on both it and what's their contacts one,
Oh, Card Hop.
Card Hop, Card Hop.
Card Hop. Yeah.
Um, eh, eh, I'm sorry, but Card Hop has always been a little buggy for me. It's
Yeah.
great, it works, but it's got some weirdness to it. I do have it running. I do have it running, but more often than not, I open up contacts and edit my
Yep.
contacts there because as I try to edit contacts in Card Hop, more often than not, the information is lost. I'll
Mm.
enter it, I'll think I've saved it, and I pull up that card again, and everything's gone. It's not there. It never synced it. It
Eh,
never saved it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the heck is going on there, but it's linked to the exact same account that my contacts app is linked to, and that saves the information. So there's something weird about Card Hop in the way I use it, I guess. But I keep it running just because it's a nice, convenient way to look up contacts.
Yeah.
But as far as just wanting to purely see what's coming up on your calendar without needing to have your calendar app up and running, Itzycal is it. Yep.
Itzycal is great. No, it is. In fact, the reason why it didn't work for me is because I needed, and this is again because I don't use the built-in calendar. or Apple's calendar. I needed something on the phone and iPad as well as the
Mm,
Mac.
hmm.
And so, of course, ItzyCal is Mac only. And but like I said, I did try it out and I really, really liked it. And so that ultimately that's why I went to BusyCal, and and it is a paid for thing, like you mentioned. But yeah, their sub is a little bit different, and it's more reasonable than Fantastical. I totally agree. I wish it is a little bit different than, well, quite a bit different than Fantastical in some ways. I do like the interface of Fantastical. I've always, I even like the drop down menu bar calendar better.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Me too.
um, I know you don't really care for the Fantastical full calendar, but I also kind of liked how that looked too. But like I said, BusyCal really does everything that I used in Fantastical, and they have a busy contacts as well.
They
But
do. They do. Yep.
it's and it's kind of interesting thing because it will take the email. It's got like a little built-in email viewer too, so the contacts, you can actually see what emails they've sent. And
That is super
I don't
cool.
use it that much, but yeah,
Yeah.
it is cool.
And full disclosure, I use Fantastical on the iPhone. Um, I I
Okay, yeah,
I'm a little different in
right,
well, not a little different than everybody, but I'm a little different in that I
right,
use Google Workspace for my primary domain. I use Google Workspace for Mac OS only, for my primary personal domain, for my business, and that gives me a little bit more breadth of choice when it comes to the apps I can use on the phone.
right.
I do use Fantastical on the phone. I do like Fantastical on the phone. Again, I don't have the subscription version. I have a version I bought into before that because I believe the app now on the phone is also subscription. I I
Yeah,
think. Um,
it's all one big happy subscription. It is.
However, I will say that if you're looking and Apple's calendar is just not good on the phone. It's just not good. Sorry,
Yeah,
it's too hard to
yeah,
navigate. But
yep.
a nice simple one to navigate for those who can use it is Google Calendar. It's very good, and
Yeah, I
I
should
like
check that out.
Google Calendar a lot. Now, what I don't know is if Google Calendar will also work with third-party services and anything other than Google services. I think it's only Google services.
Yeah,
Fantastical, of course, will work with multiple, and it's great. It's great on the phone. But
right.
yeah, I guess one of these days I'll have to give Apple's calendar another look. But last time I looked at it, it's still just as awkward as it's always been. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
there you go.
Which
So what's next?
actually
Oh, go ahead.
is, no, I was going to say that that is probably, I do like, I actually like the calendar app on the Mac. I don't like it on the phone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree there.
Yeah. So what is your next pick this year, Eric?
The next pick actually, while Launchbar was seemingly easy to pick for, at the beginning, saying this is definitely probably the first number one. The second one seems that it almost could be a tie for like three or four different apps. But I think the one I have to go to, and actually maybe this is a little bit different, um, but it's something that I've used forever, and I realize that I can't get by without it. Again, even for a day, and it may sound a little bit silly, but this is iStat menus,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
it's a terrific app, and its kind of main point is to provide gauges, almost like in a car, but in this case for a computer. And so with it, you can track and monitor everything from your CPU to your memory, how much memory is being used, how much CPU is being used. It also, your network, hard drives storage, how much storage is being used, and what drive is being accessed, and again with your network, how much data is being downloaded and uploaded, and who's, to a certain degree, who's doing it or what's doing it, and then also all the way to sensors, so including fans, which they didn't have for Apple Silicon right away, but they've now added. And so it'll, in the case of the sensors, it'll tell you how warm your processor is running, or, whatever part of the, it'll say like your battery temp, what the airflow is, the airport card in there, or what the GPU temp or the CPU, and with the GPU and the CPU, it'll say like CPU performance core 6 is 131 degrees, core 5 is 129. I don't look at all that all the time. I do, especially when it was with Intel. I would look at that quite a bit and look at the temps, especially when the fans kicked on, because I would kind of, wonder, okay, why are these kicking on? And it seemed more and more with Intel processors, there just wasn't any reason. It used to be, well, okay, something's really hogging the CPU. And of course, now with Apple Silicon, you can't tell because you hardly ever hear the fan. In fact, I must say I never do. And so, but I do use it, especially to see, and I have it up. So the iStat menus has like two parts to it. They have one part of it that sits up in the menu bar, and you can see on your display, and you can have anything from CPU to memory to storage to battery, which is what I have up there. And then when you click on them, they'll show a drop down menu, and they'll show like the CPU, and you can have whatever order you want to. But you'll clearly see right away, if you look up in your menu bar, and you'll see the CPU meters pegged red and like across the board. Okay, so something's using the CPU, something's really putting some strain on it, and then you can go in, drop down the menu, and see what it is, and see what application is using the most CPU. Now, right now, it's the CPU is probably about 11%. The most of it's actually idle. But the one process that's using the most CPU right now is Google Chrome, because I'm using it for recording. Um, but and it's the same thing with the memory. It does a great job of showing memory pressure, app memory, wired, compressed memory, cache, system swap memory, and so forth. Um, the battery information, it shows it's draining, how much time is left, the health of your battery, the number of cycles, condition, and all
Mm.
that stuff. And the great thing with that, and so I don't show the normal, like in the case of my MacBook Pro, I don't show the Apple uh, battery icon up there. I just show the iStat menus one, and because it shows all the information that I need to see. Plus, it actually takes up less space on the menu bar, and it's colored, and you can have it. If it's draining, it shows one color. If it's charging, it shows a different color. So, or if it's, uh, you know, in the case of like draining and charging, I have like the time that, in the case right now it's draining, so it says 2 hours and 44 minutes. It's at 59%, um, and then it'll show that for when you're charging, how long it'll take to charge it. But then when it's charged, it'll just show like a green, just kind of a green vertical line, but a little green battery icon, because then it uses less space as well for that. But the other neat thing with iStat menus is they also provide weather data and kind of like ItzyCal access to your calendar. So you can actually click on. I've got the time. Um, well, it's sort of the day and time along with the seconds up there. And if I click on it, it'll show January 2024, and it'll show the month, and it'll show all my uh, different things on my calendar. And it will also show, like, it also shows different time zones, shows the moon. Like right now we're pretty much in a new moon, or I think it's waxing crescent. Um, but it'll also show within the current location the sunrise time, sunset, where the um, how many hours of daylight there is, twilight, golden hour, blue hour. So if you want to take pictures, um, it also shows the space station, the current location, and what it'll be flying overhead. So, and the weather shows a bunch of great information too. The weather is actually one part that is sort of a subscription, and you can pay based on how frequently you want the weather updated, and they give you a couple different weather providers, and that's because they get charged for that as well. But it actually is just a terrific app to let you know what's going on with your Mac, plus other information as well. Kind of, and they do a really good job of. They're really pretty good interface designers, so it looks really nice as well. So I definitely recommend it. And whether it should have been my second most essential app or not, I don't know, but it is something that I just totally rely on and always am reinstalling when I need to.
Well, I was waiting for iStat menus to be on your list. This has been a go-to of yours for years, and rightly so. Rightly so.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic app. Now, I'm trying to remember, is that I used to use a there was a little dashboard widget that the same developers created for for
Yes.
dashboard, and I used that all the time. And it was a simplified version of what the full iStat menus gives you, but
Yes.
it
Yep.
kept everything there on the dashboard. You didn't have to display it all in the menu bar. And that goes back to what I was saying
Right.
earlier about not wanting to clutter up my menu bar as I look at my cluttered menu bar. But
Right.
the dashboard widget was fantastic, and that was one of the things that hurt the most when dashboard went away is losing the calculator, which I mentioned, and also
Yep.
losing this. Well, it was from them. It was
It
from
was from them. Yeah.
yeah, and
Django.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
and there's just no replacement. I mean, you can get the full iStat
No.
menus, and I think they created a widget for Notification Center, didn't they?
Right. Yes.
But
It's not the same.
it's not the same. It's not the same as the old one. So I use that all the
No.
time. But I knew you were going to bring up iStat menus. Now it's interesting because every time we do one of these lists, I always think, I should search and see what other recommended app lists are out there, just in case I'm missing something. And it's
Right. Right.
interesting because this time there is an app that came up, and it's called simply Stats. It's just called Stats. And
Really?
what I like about this is one, it's free. Two, it's independently developed. It appears to be open source. You can download the source code for it from GitHub,
Nice.
and it appears to be a clone of iStat menu, quite frankly.
Really?
Now, I hmm, it's tough because iStat menus does such a good job, and I think I would, if someone is looking for something like this, and you're talking about monitoring your system and making sure you're getting
Right.
accurate information, there's something to be said for buying into that, and I think
Right.
going
Right.
with your suggestion of iStat menus may be the better way to go. But if someone is just interested in noodling around with this information and isn't quite ready to purchase iStat menus, this looks like a pretty good choice. Again, it's called Stats. You can download it on GitHub. I'll put a link in the show notes. But it
Okay.
allows you to monitor CPU utilization, RAM usage, operating temperatures, network activity, fan activity, GPU usage, disk use, Bluetooth and battery use, and the so much more. And like iStat menus, it allows you to display it all across your menu bar, and it allows you to click on those items and get more detailed information. So it's almost an unashamedly obvious clone of
Clone.
iStat menus, but it's out there.
I,
You can check it out. Um,
I should
uh,
check that out.
there's a fair number of folks I know, and rightly so, are a little suspicious of freely made available apps that you might install on your system, apps that come from GitHub, apps that come from other sources on the internet, that don't come through the Mac App Store or don't come from a trusted developer. And I'm with you. That's a bit of
Yeah.
advice that we give all the time, to help
GitHub's
protect your Mac.
pretty good.
They're,
Yeah.
they're, they're
Yeah.
good. They are very good. And look, open source. There's a lot of eyes on it. If there's a problem,
Right. Right.
likely to point it out, um, and
Yep.
get them pulled down, honestly.
Right.
But,
Yes. Yeah.
getting your apps from the App Store, there's a lot to be said for that. Getting your apps from trusted developers, tons to be said for that. Supporting developers who put their blood, sweat, and tears into producing fantastic apps like iStat menus, absolutely. But if you're looking for just to play around with it, don't as seriously need that information at your fingertips all the time. You might look at stats.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
Yeah.
was
No, that's
it happened to come up when I was doing a quick search this week, and I thought that was pretty cool. I should also mention Activity Monitor. Going
yes.
to my picks of what comes with the Mac that I can use to do something similar. An Activity Monitor does allow you to do something similar. It
Yep.
not exactly the same, not as feature rich, not as feature rich as iStat menus, but you can minimize the app to an icon that continues to show graphs and shows CPU usage and things like that. And if you start to see it, um, right, you can still do that, can't you? I think you can
Yeah.
still, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
I know you used to be able to do. I don't do that. I don't let the icon do that. But you always used to be able to minimize it to an icon that would show you CPU usage and stuff.
Yep.
And
In fact, it does that in the dock anyway, as well as if you command tab through the apps, you'll see that little line that shows you the CPU usage, or whatever. That might be just something I have turned on as well. Which, by the way, I'll say too with iStat menus, and it could be with the stats as well. You can. It actually has icons at the bottom of the menu, and one of them is uh, Activity Manager, and you can or Monitor, excuse me, Activity Monitor, and you can, as well as other applications. It's usually based on whatever you're looking at. But you can like go to Activity Monitor, to the console, to the terminal, that sort of thing as well. So,
that's
but yeah,
awesome.
yeah, that's
Yep.
yeah,
I just looked it up. Activity Monitor, you do have to turn it on. It's under the View menu, dock
okay,
icon. You can show CPU usage, you can show CPU history, you can show network usage, and you can show disk activity. And then,
mhm,
as for the things you can monitor on your Mac, you can monitor all processes, your processes only, system processes
yep,
only. You can monitor, what else can you monitor here? You can monitor memory usage, energy usage, disk usage, network activity. So there's a lot of cool things you can monitor on your Mac with a tool that's built into Mac OS. The one thing that
right,
Apple can't seem to get right is battery health. They do not seem to want to give you the detailed information that we sometimes want about our battery health. They can
right,
say
right,
it's good, but show me the cycle, show me the detail that I can get with iStat menus, or I can get with Coconut
right,
Battery, or one of these other
right.
tools. And Coconut Battery would be a good companion to Activity Monitor, but yeah, iStat menus is a fantastic choice.
Yeah, nope, that is the truth actually. And you're completely right about the battery condition. There's times where iStat and Coconut battery will say that the condition of the battery is fair, or maybe even not as good, but Apple's about good or
Yep,
normal or
it's good.
whatever,
It's normal,
and you're
or
like,
yeah, whatever the wording is.
you're like, is it though? Is it really
Is it
normal
really
or
Apple, or do you just not want to
yeah,
replace the battery for me under warranty? I think that's I
right,
think that's more the issue.
right, yeah,
Oh. And that whole, we're not going to even consider replacing the battery if it's above, um, what was it, 80% life or something like that. I think,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, they won't even consider if it's above a certain percentage. Like, okay, well,
And
it's
why?
clearly having problems.
Yeah, I know. I know. Why wait till it's critical or whatever? Yeah. And Did they say too that they're not replacing your Apple Watch battery? Did I read something? I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
thought
I don't know.
something. Yeah.
Gee, or make them replaceable, huh? Well, that that would be
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
that would be an
Exactly.
option too, I suppose. Don't glue them to within an inch of their life so that you can't get them out without risking an explosion.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. So,
Yes.
folks are going to notice a trend here with my picks this year, my 5 picks, in that I'm keeping things simple. And again, this is a returning app. It's something I mentioned before. I know there are tons of other apps that do this exact same thing, if not do it better. And I fully admit the other apps do it better. In fact, I'm going to even mention an alternative that's a good choice for folks who might want a little bit more than what this app does. But whether you use this app or you use one of the myriad alternatives, I think everybody needs a clipboard manager. Everybody needs a clipboard manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is almost certainly the thing I miss the most when I sit down to an app that does not, I mean, a Mac that does not have a clipboard manager installed. I find myself going to paste and the information I want is not there. And I say, why is only the most? Oh, because I'm not running my clipboard manager. And the clipboard manager of choice that I use is, again, it's a simple one. It only retains the history of text that you copy.
Oh,
It does
that's
not
right.
it does not retain a history of graphics you copy. It doesn't retain a history of I mean, if you copy something like HTML code, it will retain that. If you copy text that has formatting applied, like bold and italic and underline and stuff like that, it will retain that through one copy cycle, you know, but it will not retain it indefinitely. It ultimately just is a plain text clipboard manager, which is for the most part what I need the most. That is what I'm copying. That is what I'm wanting to paste repeatedly, more so than I'm worried about formatting or more so than I'm worried about graphics and things like that. If you want more, there are alternatives. But the one I use, which I have not mentioned yet, and I don't know why have not mentioned it yet, is Jump Cut. Jump Cut, again, is
Right.
a free app. It is, I believe, open source because it is also on GitHub. So I think by definition, it's open source. You can download the source code for it. In fact, I know it's open source because there was a fork of Jump Cut that came out a few years ago, and Jump Cut was not being updated. It was not being brought up to snuff to work with the latest versions of macOS. A fork was created called FlyCut, and FlyCut is also available on GitHub, but it's also available in the Mac App Store. So if you're looking for
Hmm.
something that's in the Mac App Store that works pretty much identically to JumpCut, except has a different icon and different name, that would be FlyCut. And you can find that in the Mac App Store. But JumpCut is my choice. It just puts a little icon in the menu bar. You can use keystrokes to recover previously copied text. And I have to look them up because the way I use it is I use the menu bar app. I click on it and then I have mine set to display 40 previous entries. It will remember 99 previous entries and I have it display 40. So I can go back through any of those 40 and paste it, and and that's why I use the menu bar all the time. I don't want to sit there and use the hotkey, which by default is control control option V. If you do control option V, that is the hotkey. And we just lost Eric. So I'm going to switch back to me for a moment. And then there's also features within the preferences for jump cut to ignore large clippings, to ignore confidential clippings, so things like passwords, to never save the clippings to disk, to allow white space clippings, and to move clippings to the top after use. So if you use, I mentioned that list of 40 options. If you use one of those, partway down that list, the next time it would be at the top of the list if you move clippings to the top after use. There are appearance options for changing the status bar icon. There is an option to launch automatically at at login, and also to automatically check for updates. What it does not do, however, is it does not sync to iCloud, and that's something that FlyCut does. Is FlyCut has an option to sync to iCloud, and JumpCut does not. But I keep falling back to JumpCut over and over again, and it is my go-to clipboard manager. Now, I did mention I was going to have an alternative for you, and the alternative that I wanted to mention is called similarly priced, not completely free, but similarly priced, is Mackie, Maccy. This has been around forever, and I believe that Mackie not only allows you to copy text like JumpCut does, but Mackie also will hold things like images that you copy. Um, uh, Images, clipboard items, um, just going through their list here. It's like one or two steps above what you might get with JumpCut. And if you're looking for something that will also allow you to manage clippings of things other than plain text, Mackie might be a choice. And I say almost free. I've heard that it's available free, but when I click through to it, when I've looked at the developer site, there is a suggested $10 um, purchase price for it. So while technically you could say, no, no, give it to me free, again, supporting the developer who put a lot of time and effort into this, $10 is the least that they can, the least you can do to support their efforts. And likewise, if you look for Mackie in the Mac App Store, which it is in the Mac App Store, it's $9.99 on the Mac App Store. JumpCut itself, which I'll link to in the show notes, and I'll also link to Mackie, but JumpCut itself is free on GitHub. Now I'm going to take a brief moment here and see if Eric has been trying to reach out to me. Let's see. Oh, he is back with us. Okay, great.
Um,
I had
yep.
do not disturb on, and I didn't see that you had sent a message.
No, that's no problem.
Yeah, we lost you.
My
We
stupid,
lost you.
yeah, the
What's that?
Wi-Fi went down, and then I fought with it to get back up too. So I'm hoping that this will be good.
Yeah,
Somebody else, I think, was watching a movie. So
there you go. Well, you're much clearer now. Whatever you did.
yeah, well, hopefully it stays that way.
Well, I just finished up talking about JumpCut and an alternative called Mackie, Maccy. Mackie's a great choice if you want something that can do a little bit more than JumpCut, like retain the clipboard history for images and stuff like that. Mackie is, I guess, technically you can get it free, but the developer does, he uses Gumroad and does suggest a $10 donation to get it. And if you go to get it on the Mac App Store, it's $9.99. So, a little bit of price, but one-time price, and makes it a nice alternative to JumpCut if or when you need more than what JumpCut can provide.
Yeah, that's nice actually, and that's not a bad price.
No, no, not a
That's
bad
actually
price at
really
all.
good.
So, Mr. Erickson, we're only up to our third choice. We have 5 of these we're trying to get
Sure.
to. What
I
is
know.
your third choice for Essential App this year?
And I was going to say, with the clipboard manager, I am completely in agreement with you 100%. And like I said, I use Launchbar a lot for that, but I do have other things in there. Like you said, there's a ton of them. One of them I recently discovered though, because I use the clipboard manager so much, and I want it on the phone as well. I've
Mm-hmm.
discovered something called Paste Pal, and I've kind of using that a little bit more on the Mac as well, because the good thing is that it synchronizes between the Mac and iPad and iPhone. And for one, I think for 14.99, which is their Pro thing, it you can use it on all the things. But anyway, it it the phone, and I think this is because Apple allows it and probably says this is how it's done, um, because apps can't run in the background on iOS. The way they get around this for monitoring the clipboard is to basically, it like runs a little, it's not a movie, but it's the same sort of thing where you start watching a movie and then you leave the app and the movie keeps playing in the background, keeps playing on the phone,
Yeah.
and you can shove it over to the side so you don't see it at all, except for like a little arrow.
Oh, geez.
And so that's the way this runs this. And I've seen other clipboard manager apps kind of do the same thing. So it monitors the clipboard. So as you copy things, it just keeps adding them to the app. And so in that way you have a clipboard history, clipboard monitor the same way that you do, on the Mac. So
That's crazy.
um, it is crazy, but it does work. So it's actually a cool thing. But it does more than just text. It does images and stuff like that too. So, um, but
So,
it's
question
interesting.
is PastePal the same as PasteBot?
No, I do use PasteBot as well,
PasteBot is
but
another
no,
one.
they're two different. Yes,
Yeah.
PastePal is different. PasteBot is done by TapBots,
Right.
and that is, I use that because it's actually got some really slick features, including the ability to actually filter through. Um, you can actually write regex, and so the stuff that you copy into, or that gets copied, you can say remove all the numbers from this text or remove all the phone number or whatever. And I have used that, and
Hmm.
so I keep PasteBot around just for that, as well as I keep it around because I store Final Cut uh, effects and titles and stuff like that within PasteBot, that I can reuse them down the line on similar videos.
And
So
see, the ability to store stuff longer term would be a reason to upgrade to something like PasteBot or PastePal or one of the other apps that is
yeah,
much more full featured than JumpCut. Um, I think one of the things about having a simple brain like I do is that I don't need that complexity, and I don't want that. I get confused when I have too much complexity.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I tend to not, and that's something I ran into with Typinator. I recently upgraded my license for Typinator. It had been a while since I'd upgraded it, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna upgrade it. Um, I always use Type It For Me, and I like Type It For Me. And as soon as I started using Typinator, I realized, boy, this is a lot more complicated than Type It For Me, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I thought that was great, but the one as complicated, or I shouldn't say complicated, that makes it sound like super techy. It's not. I mean, it has the ability to interact with it in a more advanced way. How about that? And
yeah.
and that's good, and that's really good. The one thing, though, for all of its advanced usage, the one thing the Typinator does not have, and I was surprised and disappointed by this, and it immediately caused me to go back to Type It For Me. And I love Typinator. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great. I love Popcar, which is one of their other apps, and I
Yep,
highly recommend
yep.
Popcar, and it often makes our essential apps list. But the reason I went immediately back to Type It For Me is that Type It For Me in the menu bar app allows me to click and go to the various categories of saved snippets and insert them from the menu. And Typinator does not have that feature. You cannot click the menu bar app and get to your saved snippets. you have to remember the keystrokes. And I cannot for the life of me remember the keystrokes for these things. Even if it's one I use
Oh,
over and
I
over
see.
again, I cannot remember the keystrokes. And so I rely upon the menu bar feature of Type It For Me to insert my saved snippets. I love having saved snippets, but I don't love having to remember the keyboard shortcuts.
Stupid keystrokes. Yeah,
And
keyboard shortcuts.
Typinator lacks that functionality.
The and actually, that's a great segue into my next app because it was going to be Typinator. So,
See, I knew
um,
that. I knew
Typinator
that.
is
There you go.
you did know that.
No, I didn't know that,
Yeah,
but
that's
yes.
amazing. Actually, uh, you're right. You do not have that in the menu bar portion of Typinator. However, you can, and again, it's kind of you have to remember another keystroke, but Um, you can search Typinator for that snippet and bring it up and hit enter and execute it.
Mm,
So while it doesn't have it all categorized inside the menu where you can go through and find it, you can get it by searching for it
hmm.
without having to remember. Well,
You still have to
again,
remember
you have
something.
to at least
Yeah,
you have to remember the keystroke to search for it.
right.
But then uh, the name, you can search for the name or the phrase or the whatever. But that is, I do use Typinator. I discovered Typinator a long, long time ago inside a bundle, one of those bundles I
Me
got,
too. That's how I got it too.
you know, and I remember I installed it and I just kind of forgot about it. And then all of a sudden I was typing away and doing stuff, and I heard this little shink in there or something. I can't remember the sound effect, but it would fix the word. It would, correct. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. And before, and this was probably in the days of Leopard or barely Snow Leopard. I can't
Before
remember.
Apple built it
Before
in.
Apple,
Yeah.
yeah, before Apple, built in their text replacement and also had their, check spelling well typing thing and across the system. And anyway, but those two things only work on native Mac apps that support that. So in other words, non Cocoa apps like Firefox, it wouldn't work on. So, which is where you need something like Type It For Me or Typinator. But anyway, and so I started looking into it, and I thought, well, this is really good. And then I briefly switched to Text Expander because everybody's like Text Expander.
Yeah.
And I used that for a while, and then they went to subscription.
Yep.
And while I like Text Expander and while I had some really nice features, there were some things that I thought were a little janky comparison to Typinator. I thought Typinator did a little bit better job. But anyway, I switched back to Typinator because they didn't have a sub, and but then they also didn't have some of the features that Text Expander did, and one of those was where you can actually create a form within Text Expander for things that you repeatedly do that are probably more complicated, and they added this to Typinator in version 6 or 7, and it works like so you can add. In other words, I have like if I want to send an email to my Evernote account because I've I put something in there that I want to save, I can type plus note and it will give me a list of my notebooks that I have
Mm-hmm.
in Evernote because you need to know the name, and I can choose that from a pop up menu, and then also it also gives me the right thing to put in for a reminder if I want to set up a reminder or do a tag and all that stuff. So it makes it really easy to do that. And there's several other examples of that. Plus, if you let's say you do sort of like for Mac Guys Only news for the week of January 15th to whatever 2024,
Yeah.
you can easily do that. You can just type in a simple keyboard, a couple letters, let's say FMEO, W or something like that, and it will it will put out the right dates for this upcoming week or for whatever week you want. I mean, or
Yeah.
for whatever day you want. It does date math and it does, it's insane. So you can come up with these things, and even if it's like one of those things like I don't know how the heck I'm supposed to do, you can actually write Ergonis, the company that develops it, and they're really good about helping you through um, stuff and saying, here's how you do this, or they'll come up with a little thing to do it. So I have some fairly sophisticated uh, typinator shortcuts or whatever you want to call them that do a bunch of stuff. But it is, and that's one of the reasons why it has become my essential app, because I use it for so many things over and over again that if I had to type all that stuff again and again, one, I'd make mistakes and I
Yeah.
would get it wrong, or I would type in the wrong date, or, even just, where in the case of using a form where I'll say, this is video episode 209. I have it where I just type in like TVN and it says blah, blah, blah episode, and it already has 209 because that's what I typed in there last time. So I know I can put in 210. I don't have to look at, oh
Mm.
yeah, what was that again? And so it just makes things, it not only speeds things up, but it also makes things more accurate and less mistake prone. And that I barely touched half the stuff that you can do. And again, I'm like you, I get confused, except for I'm not smart enough to actually say, well, you know what, I should probably just use type it for me. And actually, I just keep using these complicated apps and then only use like 20% of what they do, and just, you
Y-
know,
Well, and here's the thing. Yeah, Ergonis is fantastic. And like I said, I love
yeah.
PopCare. And I'm glad you gave a glowing review to Typinator after I pooped on it, because
You did.
it really is a fantastic text
Yeah.
substitution app. And yes, text expander is fantastic, but once they went to the subscription, it got to be a little too much. And
Yeah.
it the cost of the subscription is more than the usage I will get out of it. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
And that's not true for everyone. For a lot of folks,
Right.
the money spent on text expander is more than
Yes.
well worth it. More than well worth it. And I know plenty of people personally who make the most of text expander and absolutely love it. It's
Yep.
fantastic. But as alternatives, Type It For Me is great. I love the
It
fact that
is.
I can choose my snippets from the menu bar. Typinator, I'll be honest, is better than Type It For Me when it comes to managing your snippets. Managing your snippets is so much easier with Typinator than it is with Type It For Me. And then the other thing, as you mentioned, is that additional functionality that you get that you just don't get with Type It For Me. The forms, and I mean, there's just so much to it. I know I would probably only use 10 to 20% of it. Just like,
Yeah.
the saying goes, yes, you're using Microsoft Word, but you're really only using 5% of it, right? But the 5% that you're using is different for everybody. Your
Is
5% is
right.
different from my 5%. Just like Final Cut, I might be using 30, 40, 50% of it, but that 30, 40, 50% of it is completely different than the
Yeah.
30, 40, 50% that you're using it. You know,
Yep.
so
Yep.
it's fantastic. All that functionality is in there, and Typinator is just leaps and bounds above Type It For Me when it comes to that sort of thing. However, much like I mentioned with Postbox, the one thing that's keeping me away from using Postbox instead of Thunderbird is Quick Filter. Quick Filter
Yes.
does not
Yep.
exist in Postbox, and because Quick Filter doesn't exist, I don't use it because it's something
Yep.
that I depend upon heavily on a daily basis. For the snippets that I use in Type It For Me, I depend upon it being available in the menu bar. Maybe version 10, if we're up to version 9 of Typinator, that's the one I just purchased, or upgraded to. Version 10, maybe it will include that. I don't know. And that may be the
Yeah.
turning point.
Right.
Or it may be that it's not even a consideration to them. Maybe I should email them and say, hey, have you thought about doing this? But
Right.
you know,
And they'll tell
everything.
you no
Yeah,
and why
just
they
like
shouldn't.
Postbox, they'll say, no, no, we like it the way it is. Cool. Well, there you go. That's my answer. But t- look, I didn't lightly decide to up my subscription to or renew not subscription, renew my license to Typinator.
Right. Right.
It it the functionality that they showed and the ability to download snippets. They have a whole snippet library. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
There's a whole
Yep.
snippet library that you can download these and bring them onto your computer in seconds and have these whole new libraries of stuff available to you. But the fact that I don't want to commit the brain cells to memorizing all these shortcuts. So
Yeah.
I like the menu. But I was able to bring everything from
Right.
Type It For Me over to Typinator very easily. I was able to enhance it. I was able to make it better. And the one thing I think that's going to keep me from using it is the menu bar. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But Typinator is great, and I think that's a fantastic solution. And people who are listening, those are three great solutions: Text Expander,
Yeah.
Type It For Me, and Typinator. All fantastic options, and I think all leaps and bounds above what Apple provides with macOS, which is fine. It's fine.
And I think what it is, and you're right. And I think you bring up an interesting point when you talked about Postbox and you said, I don't use it because it doesn't have quick filter. And you're thinking, well, it's just that one thing. But it is that one thing that these apps do that is the reason you continue to use them and you don't use the competitor or the other. I mean,
Right.
there's probably that one thing in LaunchBar, like I mentioned, with just going through, being able to pull up whatever file by name, or go through and search within a folder by typing in a few letters. In fact, it's LaunchBar's quick filter is what it is, that it
Right.
does, that Raycast and Alfred don't do, or do as easily, that keeps me using it. And
Hmm.
it is that one thing, and again, type in there might be the forums. I don't know, but and I will say too, type it for me. I've heard lots of good things about it. There are plenty of users that talk about and like and love and use type it for me. And um, so it definitely is just a great app on its own merit. I will say with Orgonis that they are a German company. Not that that should mean anything, but I have written them a few times, and, and I've kind of gotten the nine. We don't do that. We're not. I When they first came out with the form thing, I said I need to be able to bring up the form, but go to a different app to pluck the information out to put it in the form, and then go back into the app that fill it in. I said I could do that with Text Expander, and they said no, that's dangerous. You can't do that. It's
Huh.
that's why we did it, because you can't. They then came out with an update about 2 weeks later where it allowed you to do that very thing that I was asking for. They never said, okay, we added it. Yeah, you're right. They just added it. And they put a big warning message when you go out to another app. It says, just, you're not in the same app, because, like, well, yeah, I know what I'm doing. But,
Yeah.
it's funny. It's always like every time I write them, no, you can't do that. you
And
know,
then they think
that
about
was the
it.
first time they actually,
Yeah.
when they thought about it, they actually went and did it. But usually, like, if you said, hey, you should add this to your add that, you should write them. Say you should add it to the menu bar. No, they
No.
probably just telling you no straight out.
Well, and that's the thing too about all of them. When you set out to develop an app, and it's been years and years and years and years since I've done anything on even a basic level, which we've talked
Yeah.
about here on the show before. But you have your own vision. You have a vision for how this app
Yes.
should work, and
Yes.
I have to respect the vision that Typinator has, that Type It For Me has,
Yes.
that Text Expander has. You have to respect that vision. You can make suggestions, but if the answer is no,
Right.
you have to honor that. You have to say, okay, well, this particular developer said no, this is not going to happen, like with Postbox. No, we're not going to bring this feature from Thunderbird because it is a fork of Thunderbird. We're not going to bring this feature of Thunderbird over to Postbox, period. That's basically the answer. We provided this other functionality. That's our vision for how this should work. And I just said,
Right.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
And that whether I use it or not is of little consequence to them. And I
Right.
doubt that quick filter is the determining factor for most people who decide to use Postbox. It just happens to be
Right.
my determining factor.
Yours.
And as you said correctly, every one of these apps we talk about, if for some reason I convinced you to stop using LaunchBar and to switch to something else, and you were missing those features, your only reaction would be, "Darn that Mike! He made me switch away from LaunchBar, and now I can't do this thing."
No.
And so I think
Right.
that's that's a great point to bring up is these are what we consider essential apps. But if you have something better, and I'll mention this at the end of the show, but if you have
Oh,
something
for
better,
sure.
by all means share it with us because it just might make next year's list.
Right. And you're making an excellent point about the developer's vision because exactly. And anytime I've written or Ergonis or other developers, it's usually an excellent point, and
Mm-hmm.
why they can't do a particular thing.
Yep.
And no, that is exactly right.
9.
Nice.
My third pick, Eric, is also not new, but I don't believe I've mentioned this in the core essential apps list for a couple goes now. But I do believe that every Mac user should have an alternative web browser installed on their computer. Now, I also believe that most of the folks listening know what a web browser is. It's very common to mention to people I encounter on a weekly basis, "Hey, just open up your browser and let's go to this website." And
Mhm.
very
Yes.
frequently the conversation switches to, "Well, what's a web browser? What are you talking about?" "Well, how do you go to the internet?" "Well, I click the internet icon." "What does the internet
Yeah.
icon look like?" "Well, it looks like a multicolor." "Okay, you're using Chrome." "Okay, so,
Yeah.
and then you move on.
Right. Right.
But I'm going to assume that everybody knows what a web browser is, and the one that ships with the Mac is Safari. And Safari as a
Yeah.
web browser is fine, and Apple is always making improvements to it. Much like my pick, Apple uses its own engine. They use WebKit for Safari and a few other toolios that developers can take advantage of in their own apps, but they use WebKit for it, and it is their own take, their own vision for what a web browser should be. And competing visions
Yep.
might be Google's Chromium engine or even Mozilla's engine, which is I'm completely blanking on what they call theirs.
Is it Gecko or is it
Is
Page
it still Gecko?
or
Anyway,
is it
I'm
changed?
blanking and I
Yeah.
apologize, and I apologize even more because my pick is Firefox. So the the pick for an alternative browser is Firefox. I think Firefox is fantastic. It is in a much better and different place than it was just a few years ago. The development of Firefox is moving in a very positive direction, in a direction that I think most Mac users can appreciate, in that Firefox's mantra is privacy. That's a big, important feature that Firefox builds into their browsers. Um, uh, and one of the most recent features, I'm not going to go through a list of all the features that Firefox offers, but as an alternative browser, one of the features that Firefox offers is a new one called Total Cookie Protection, which is just an incredible way to enhance your default browsing privacy. Some of the other new features they've introduced recently is the ability to edit PDFs directly within the browser. They were one of the early ones to build a PDF viewer into the browser. Chrome was there, obviously, and others were there, but now you can edit PDFs directly within Firefox when you're viewing them with the
That's slick.
Firefox browser. And then something that you and I have talked about, which is also a relatively new feature, but you mentioned a similar feature in Safari. Firefox has a feature called Firefox View, that when you click that little tab in the top left corner shows you all the tabs that you have open, not only on this device, but all of your devices that you are syncing to your Mozilla account. Much like you can sync Firefox with your iCloud account, I'm sorry, much like you can sync Safari with your iCloud account, you can sync your various versions of Firefox with your Mozilla account, and it syncs things like open tabs and history and passwords and all that kind of stuff, syncs securely and safely to your other devices. So those are some of the features that they've recently introduced to it. And just for comparison, and I know I've talked about this before, there are a couple features of Firefox that really are not in Safari. And one in particular, since we're talking about essential apps, one of the reasons I go back to Firefox over and over again is that it has its own in-browser screenshot tool. Now, the screenshot tools of macOS are fantastic. I use them all the time.
Yep.
Command Shift 3, Command Shift 4, Command Shift 5, which gives you the little control panel and you can do all kinds of really cool stuff. Capturing video of your screen, all that's fantastic. But the in-browser screenshot tool, one of the things it can do is capture the full page, not just what's
Page.
above the fold, not just what's what you're seeing at any given time within your active browser window, but the full page. No matter how long that page is, you can capture the full page. And I love that feature, and I use that all the time. I used to use a separate app on the Mac called Paparazzi, and that was great too, but it was much more complicated because you had to feed it the URL, you had to tell it what dimensions it was, and all this stuff.
Mhm.
Firefox's built-in screenshot tool is just phenomenal. And I use it so much that I actually put the screenshot tool icon in the toolbar of Firefox because I must take screenshots with it at least, I don't know, a dozen or more times per day. And it is invaluable to me. So I use that feature a lot. But as a secondary browser or even as a primary browser, I think Firefox is a great choice from a privacy perspective. Now, if you want to stick with a Chromium browser, I generally won't recommend Google Chrome, but there
Right.
are a couple fantastic privacy-focused browsers. Brave, of course, is a great choice. And then another one that I load on most of my Macs, and it seems as if it's pretty well focused on privacy to the point where its ad blocker is just fantastic. It's a default built-in ad blocker and default built-in VPN, free, by the way, is Opera. Opera is a Chromium
Yeah.
browser, and it has it used the VPN. I believe the VPN used to be only in private browsing tabs, but they made it available in the primary tab as well, and or non-private browsing. And yeah, the ad blocking is phenomenal. It's really, really good, and it's not. It doesn't show up as an extension, so it's just something that's part and parcel of Opera. It is an
Good
extension,
built in.
but it's just there and it's on all the time. And I like that as a secondary or as a tertiary browser. Um, I'll I'll go to Opera. Interestingly, something changed on one of my other hobbies, one of my other loves is Lego, and something changed on Lego's website. I cannot log into my account on Lego with Firefox. To save my life, I cannot log into it. I keep getting, the error message saying something to the effect of, you're either a super fast human or you're a bot. We're blocking you from logging in. Like, what are you talking about? I'm just clicking log in. That's all I'm doing.
Right.
And yet it works perfectly fine on Safari. So Safari has become my go-to Lego browsing tool. And that's the interesting thing about browsers for me is that every one that I have installed on my Macs has its own specific purpose. Safari,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yep. Yep.
for visiting Apple
Lego.
sites. Well, Lego,
Yeah.
sure, but visiting Apple sites. If I want to do anything iCloud, I'm going to use Safari. If I'm going
Sorry. Yeah.
to visit a website where I know I'm going to make a purchase and I know I want to use Apple Pay, I'm going to use Safari, at least for now. That's allegedly changing at some point in the future. But for now, I'm going to use
Yeah.
Safari, right? And Lego is another reason I'm going to use Safari. And by the way, that's on all my Macs. It's not just one Mac, it's on all my Macs. So something weird is going on at Lego where I don't know what it is. And I've seen other people complain about it too. Lego claims there's no problem. So there you go. Um, but it works fine in Safari. So that
And
has become
have
my
you
Lego browsing
have you
browser.
tried changing the browser? The you know they do browser sniffing on the other end to figure out to see
I
what browser you.
have
If you tried like
I've seen
yeah
advice that changing the language fixes it. I've seen advice that clearing all your cache and cookies. No, nothing has fixed it. Don't know what it is. It's only that website. It's no other website. So I just said, you know what? Does it work in Safari? Boom. That's how I'm going to get to it
that's
from now on.
I'm just gonna do that.
So every browser I have on my Macs has a specific purpose. In Firefox, while it is my primary browser, I do use Opera for very specific things like Google Voice and other Google services. Managing my YouTube channel is through Opera. And Safari is, like I said, for my Apple related stuff, or if I'm going to make a purchase with Apple Pay or what have you. So
Yeah.
having another browser is a good idea for that, but also because Safari just doesn't work with every website out there. There are still some
Yeah.
websites that don't like or are programmed specifically for a Chromium based browser or for something other than WebKit, which is bizarre considering the market penetration that Apple now has with Safari, considering it's the same engine driving the browser on the phones and the tablets and the Mac,
Right.
that
Right.
you think developers would start to pay a little bit more attention to that. But unfortunately, there are still a handful of sites out there that don't like Safari. And
A
so
handful
having
and
another
growing.
browser for that reason alone is worth it.
Right. I've actually had more and more trouble with Safari because, as you know, that's been my day-to-day
Hmm.
browser for quite some time. And I've had more and more trouble logging in or things not working or trying to purchase something, whatever, to the point, and I've used or been using Firefox a lot more. I mean, I've always had it on my system. I've always used it for certain sites and things the same way that you mentioned with Safari. But I found myself just using it more and more, and a lot of times this isn't working and what's going on, and I'm like, okay, I'll go try it in Firefox or I'll go try it in Vivaldi. Um, and it works
Vivaldi,
fine.
another good choice. Yep.
Yeah, and I do use Vivaldi a lot. I, I'm like you. I have a bunch of different browsers on my system, and I also just like to try out different ones. And then it also, like you mentioned, ends up becoming one of those things where it literally, certain things just work better, or a browser has a certain thing, certain feature in it that allows you to do something that's better, and so you prefer using that browser for certain things.
Yep.
Which brings me to my next pick, which is number 4, Choosy, and it's a little
Yes.
software, little thing that runs in your menu bar, and I've often said with the web browser, if somebody said, "Here's your computer, you can only have one application," I would be a web browser because
Absolutely.
that is the chameleon of really applications. If there's an application you can think of, there's probably somebody that's already written a web app version of it.
Yep.
Whether it's an image editor or a word processor or an email client, whatever, it's already been done in the web. In fact, I mean, Google went as far as to basically write their own operating system in a web browser. I mean,
It's
that's what
running in a web
Chromium is, or
browser.
Chrome is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's actually become this big thing. So I have a number of web browsers on my system, and the ones you mentioned, and I have Safari, Firefox, uh, Chrome, as well as Vivaldi, Opera. There's probably something else I'm forgetting right at the moment, and two, I like to try out different things too, but also just different browsers for different things, and so Choosy makes that a lot easier and more fun. I don't know how you want to say it, but just even what you were talking about with Lego. Um, if you have a particular link, let's say you get an email from Lego, and you click the link and you want to go to the site, um, with Choosy, you can have that just automatically route you to Safari so that you don't even have to go through. But Choosy's main thing is to essentially, kind of take for granted that you've got multiple browsers on your system. Then you can order them from number one to, let's say, number five, number one being your favorite, and then the other four. And so when you have no browsers running and you click a link, let's say in an email, it'll pop up a little circle or a line of your browsers, and you can choose which browser you want to use. If your favorite browser is already running, it'll just go to that one. But let's say you're trying out Firefox or you're using Firefox because some stupid site didn't work in Safari.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're using it for things, and you click a link in an email or wherever else. Normally, what will happen is if Safari is your default browser, it'll go and open up Safari.
Right.
Even if you already have Firefox open, and even if you're totally fine with using that, and you don't want to open up another stupid browser, that's what'll happen. Where Choosy basically becomes your default browser. So
That's
when you click
huge.
a link, it goes to Choosy, and Choosy says, "Oh, Firefox is running. We'll open it up in Firefox." And you can
Wow.
change that too, by the way.
That's
You
great.
don't have to do it that way. It is. It really is slick. I mean, everything works as normal, but it just, it basically does that. And if you have multiple browsers running, it'll go to your favorite. So let's say Firefox is your favorite, but you've got Chrome running and you've got Safari running for whatever reason. It'll go to Firefox first because that's your number one. Um, you can always choose different, but you can also say, you can write rules in Choosy that say, if I'm in mail and the link, so the source application is mail, and the link, and I click a link and I hold down the option key, shuttle me over to Chrome,
Mm.
even if it's not running or whatever. So, so in the case of like FMEO TV, I mean, I think I do have it set up that way so that if it is FMEO.TV or whatever, it'll send me over to Chrome rather than just opening up Safari where I can't use it anyway. And I also do have just like, I think like an option key where I hold on the option key and it'll present me with browsers. So if I don't want it to go to my normal running browser, I can have it changed. So there's all sorts of things that you can do, but it makes it really nice. I don't know, it just sort of brings a little bit of sanity to it. It's just a nice way of being able to handle that situation, especially if you're a person that does have multiple browsers and you do use multiple browsers for different things.
Well, I love that feature of recognizing you have a browser open and using that as your default when you click a link. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Because I have come across that situation, and of course, what do? I copy the link, I go to the browser I want to open it in, I paste it, and
Right.
having something like Choosy do that for me would save a good what 30 seconds, minute, whatever it
Right.
takes to
Right.
do that. That's a big time
And
saver right there.
it is one of those things where you never notice it ever. It just kind of works in the background and you don't really see it. The only time you actually see it is when you got a browser, when you install a new browser and it's hounding you to make it its default browser or something like that, because,
Right.
you know, which
Stop
you kind of have to
asking
deal with
me.
anyway.
Yeah.
I know.
So who
Stop it.
makes
I know.
Choosy?
It's written by developer George Rockhurst, I believe is his name. It's just, I think it's just a one man operation. I'm not totally sure. But he's actually been doing it for quite some time, and I think I want to say it's on, yeah, version 2.1. Okay, George Brocklehurst. It's Brockle,
Brocklehurst.
and yeah, and he 2007 to 2024. So yeah, I want to say it's been around since, yeah, I was almost thinking longer, but 2007 anyway. And I think it started out its life as a control panel or like a system preference pane, um, and it was something that you operated, and then he eventually turned it into a full fledged app, probably because Apple said you should do
You
that.
had
I
to,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, and so, but he has kept it working, kept updates, and it actually added more functionality to it. Like I said, um, besides just having your browsers and setting up, like right now, I'm looking at my browsers. I've got Safari, Firefox, Vivaldi. And this is the order: Microsoft Edge, and then Google Chrome. Um, and then you can, and then the next option is rules. Oh, yeah, this is probably where I use it. Ecamm. So if a web address contains ecamm, always use Google Chrome. So that's where I use that. Um, and then multiple browsers are running. If number of browsers is greater than 0, use the best running browser. So that would use your favorite browser. Um,
That's awesome.
and then default behavior can be anything from use my favorite browser to use the best running browser to prompt select from all browsers, which is pretty much what it um, does to any number of things. So you've got lots of options, and you can make it as complicated or as simple as you want. You don't have to use any rules. Even if you just use the, hey, I just wanted to open up the browser that I got running and don't open up a new one bit, or open this one up first. You know, even if you just use that, it's worth the price of admission.
Well, I don't think we are going to get out. I don't think we're going to get to our truckload of bonus apps this episode,
No,
but I do think maybe we'll save those for a future one. And we
yeah,
might maybe we'll just call it our bonus essential apps episode because I am
right,
just now up to my fourth pick. Your fourth pick was choosy. That's an excellent choice. My fourth pick is something that will help you when you've installed all these browsers and now you want to know the best way to get rid of them. And not only browsers, but any other app on your
yeah,
Mac as well. So
yeah,
the default method of getting rid of an app is to drag it to the trash, right?
right,
You can literally drag Microsoft Word to the trash and it will delete that app from your Mac. Now, the downfall is, of course, that that leaves a lot of cruft around on your Mac.
yeah, yeah,
Even when you use the Windows uninstaller, there's still a lot of cruft left around on a Windows machine,
yes,
and
yeah,
that's
yep,
it's almost a little more so on the Mac because we have our preferences files and you've got settings files and you've got all this stuff that's sitting around that you probably don't even know exists that an app depends upon as it's running to
right,
remember things about
right,
you, how you use the app, the data that you keep within that app, if any. This is
preferences,
all
yep,
kept very often in other locations on your Mac. Things like copy protection apps, to check and see if you're a dirty, rotten, stinking thief. These
yeah,
are things that are left sitting around on your Mac that don't get deleted if you just drag that Mac app to the trash. Well, how
right,
can you take care of that? Well, you can dig around through your library files and you can try to find anything and everything related to the app that you just deleted, but maybe you shouldn't delete that file. Maybe it's something that's needed by another app that developer has put out. You have to be careful deleting preferences files from Microsoft Office if you decide to get rid of Word but keep Excel, that kind of thing. Well, none of
right,
this is foolproof, but there's a fantastic app out there that you can get for your Mac from a company called Free Mac Soft, and it's called App Cleaner. App Cleaner is fantastic at helping you root out all those various files that have made their way into all the library folders, both your own personal and system library folders throughout your Mac. And it's very easy to use. You can either put it in the mode where it lists all of the apps on your Mac, and you can just pick and choose what you want to have it help you clean up. Or instead of dragging
Hmm.
your app to the trash, you can drag it to App Cleaner. Now, the thing about App Cleaner is it will then show you what it's going to delete. So, where I often use an app like App Cleaner is if I want to kind of reset an app back to defaults. If I'm going to get rid of everything I can possibly get
Yeah.
rid of except for the app itself, I'll use something like
Right.
App Cleaner. Drag the app in there, it shows me everything it's going to delete. I uncheck the primary app, leave everything else checked, and say, have at it. It wipes it all out. And very often, not always, unfortunately, but very often, your app will now be started fresh, as it were. So that's a great use for it. But also, if you just want to make sure you really are getting all that junk off your system that you don't need. So, App Cleaner goes through, it finds all those little files sitting throughout, it safely deletes them, and it's free to download from freemacsoft.net. It's actually
No, that's terrific.
freemacsoft.net/app cleaner. That's the name of it. But it's a fantastic little app. I used to use one called App Zapper. App Zapper has not been developed in years. Ironically, it still works. If you have a copy of it, it still works. But App Cleaner is still in active development. It's still kept up to date. It is ready to go for anyone who is using the latest version of macOS Sonoma or even a few versions older. So check that out at freemacsoft.net and add it to your library. I think it'll be a useful
That's
little tool.
that's a great thing. I'm gonna have to check that out because when you were talking about that, I thought, okay, well, I use Hazel, which is also one of my essential apps, but
Sure.
I use Hazel, which has a trash can monitor, which does the same thing. You drag your app to the trash or hit Command Delete, and it will pop up a little thing within a few seconds after you do that, saying, "Here, you just drag this, app to the trash, or several apps, and it'll have
That's
multiple tabs.
fantastic.
List all the stuff that it's going to trash, and you can uncheck stuff if you don't want it to throw it away. And I've used it for the same way that you've done that. For the same reason, I want to get rid of all these extra system or preference apps, and I don't, I wanted because I'm having trouble with the app, but App Cleaner is, I think, better because you can drag the app to App Cleaner. It shows you the list there. You can uncheck the primary app because that was one of the reasons the aforementioned Final Cut Pro problem that I was telling you about. I didn't want to drag that to the trash can and pretend to and wait for
Oh,
Hazel to
right.
pick
Yep.
up that. And so I just went through manually and did that. However, I would do that with App Cleaner. So that's a really good thing. I mean, I trust Hazel for getting off the junk of an app that I don't want, and it works really, really well. And I wouldn't get App Cleaner just for that, but I would get it for what you just said. When you're having trouble with an app and you don't want to just go through the process of pretending to drag it to the trash can and all that.
Well, I will. I didn't go into this, but I will mention a couple of the settings you can change on App Cleaner because they're kind of directly related to what you just mentioned. And I think you hinted that your final app is Hazel.
Yeah.
But if you go into the preferences for App Cleaner, there's two neat little preferences that you can select in there, and one is to show protected apps. In other words, apps that Apple doesn't want you to delete.
Oh,
You can have them
that's
show
sweet.
up in the list,
Okay.
and you can whack them. Now they're going to come back again. The next time you do a
Yeah.
Mac OS installation, they're going to come back. But
Install. Right.
you can get rid of them because you can show protected apps. Now the other checkbox is to protect running apps. Now that is not checked by default, but you can check that box, and if you drag an app to App Cleaner and say delete this, and it detects that it's running, it'll say, whoa, 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 I can't delete this because it's running. Okay, so that's
It's running. Yeah.
that's a neat little feature in the preferences. But I also wanted to mention, and I'll be honest, I completely forgot about this until you mentioned it just a minute ago. But one of the preferences for App Cleaner is what they call Smart Delete. And if you turn on Smart Delete, and I have mine off by default, but if you turn on Smart Delete, it will detect when an app is trashed, and it will automatically find and offer to remove the related files. So it's actually a feature very
So
similar
like
to Hazel.
Hazel. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it'll monitor. Yeah. No,
it'll
that's
monitor your
that's that's
trash.
great.
Now, keeping
That
with my
is
not
really
having
nice.
too many things running at one, all the time, I don't turn that on because in order for that to work, it has to be running. It has to be a system service running, monitoring the trash
Right.
and looking for apps that are being deleted.
Right.
So I don't turn that on. If I'm going to delete an app, which is not that frequently, I should add, but if I clearly based on what I was saying about my applications folder earlier, but if I'm going to delete an app, I'll just open App Cleaner, or if I know that there isn't a lot of cruft for it, I'll just throw it in the trash. But App Cleaner
Yeah.
is great, and
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that feature, Smart Delete. But Smart Delete does exist in App Cleaner as well, so that would be another reason
That's
to
nice.
check it out as well. Now, your fifth pick is, I think you already hinted, Hazel.
Hazel.
So
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
us why that is your number five essential app pick.
That is one of those things. And again, there are a number of apps, like you said, the bonus apps that could probably all be right in here. And another day, if you'd asked me, I'd probably would say them instead of Hazel or Choosy or something like that. So it's
Yeah,
really hard. But Hazel is a great app, and I think what's really nice about it is it's essentially a rule based app, and you configure rules to keep your Mac clean. And it's based on the name of it actually. It's made by Noodlesoft, and Mr.
NoodleSoft. Yeah,
Noodle is the is the main developer. Anyway, he named it after an old TV show which I never saw or even had really heard of, called Hazel,
yeah.
which was, I believe, like a cleaning lady. And so and I always loved how it had the dust. I think it does still have the dust
The
um,
duster. Yeah, the feather duster.
duster,
Yeah,
feather duster as the icon. And but anyway, it is something that you launch. It runs in your background. It too, like Choosy back in the day, started out in life as a system preference pane, and it kind of really made sense to have it run like that. But he's since switched it over to a full fledged app, and I think for a number of reasons there was things that he couldn't do as a preference pane. But anyway,
yeah.
Hazel, you can set it up to run, and you essentially set it up to monitor folders. And so, and whether it's the desktop or whether it's a particular folder or whatever, one of the folders I have it, one of the ways that I use it is I have it monitor the movies folder, and I just keep all the videos in there. And so as I get new work coming in there, I add new folders and I add new video that I've shot and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it starts building up there, and it would definitely fill up my internal storage pretty quickly. Even even if you probably had 8 terabytes of storage, which I don't, um, you know, with high def video, even just good high def video, it doesn't take a whole lot for things to start getting used up, your storage wise anyway. And I have only 4 terabytes. So what I do is I say, I have a couple different things, and I basically say to archive um, my video as well as completed videos and stuff like that. So all the assets that I have related to that video, and it will go through. And after that folder has been sitting there for about 5 weeks, full of the video and whatever, and as well as the Final Cut Pro project and all the render files and everything else, it will move that off to another volume that I store it on, and then create an alias to that
Oh,
folder that I just moved off, so that it will, leave it and it'll notify me that I did it. So it does that after about 4 or 5 weeks, and in the case of the completed video, it does that out each week. And I leave it on there because there's a lot of times things that I want to reuse in future videos, and so I don't want to have to go after it on that volume. But so I do leave the last 2, 3, 4 weeks on there on the regular storage, but it's just something that just happens automatically. So I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about my system getting filled up with this. It just does that for me. And other ways I use it, I have it on the desktop. I do have folders on my desktop. A lot of times just throw files out there, but I don't like my desktop all messed up or all messy. And this was especially true before the days before you could stack files. So what I would do with Hazel was I would say, after a file had sat out there for a few weeks, I would say, stick it in a folder and sort it into a subfolder, essentially, based on whatever it is. So it would say the date that it did it and a PDF file. And it would sit in there for a while. And so I had a chance to get it. And then if I didn't do anything with it at it after a few weeks of being there, you would throw it into the trash. And Hazel monitors the trash as well. And after it reaches a certain size, it'll just empty the trash or start deleting files out of there, one by one. So it it's really nice to manage and keep your system kind of running. It's like a little cleaning maid going or cleaning man going through there and making sure things are tidy, and like I said, you just have it watch folders or whatever. It also is good for syncing. So if you make changes to a folder and you have that folder stored off onto another volume, let's say, and you want to keep things synced up really well so you have another copy of it, Hazel will do that as well. So if you delete a file, it'll delete it over there. If you add new files, it'll add them over. It's a really, really nice application and it's really easy to use. You don't have to have programming experience. There are some things that, depending upon whatever you're trying to do, that you have to kind of figure out. I mean, that you may have to look through the user guide to figure out, okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? But for the most part, it's pretty easy to do, really, um, most of its features.
I love it. And a lot of
Yep.
that functionality, not all of it, but a lot of that functionality can be replicated with a little bit of work using shortcuts or using
Yeah.
Automator.
Yep.
There's tools
Or
built
Apple
into
Script.
Mac OS, Apple Script, of course. Yeah, like you said, there's automation type functionality that is in Mac OS. It's in the Finder to do some of that stuff, but it can be a lot of work to set that up. And then the next
Yeah.
time you need to do something similar, you're essentially starting over. You're not
Yeah.
taking this app that already understands how all this stuff should work, that already understands how you work, and augmenting it. You're kind of starting fresh. I've got this new project. I've got this new
Yeah.
task I need to complete, and you set out to automate that task within macOS. Cool, you can do that. But something like
Yeah.
Hazel just adds an incredible amount of functionality to that workflow that takes so much of the burden of learning and relearning away from you. Boom, it's done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could use that. I could use that. My problem is that a lot of my offloaded stuff, I have offloaded to drives that are not continually attached to my Macs. So to offload stuff, I need to actually get that drive, attach it to the Mac, and then do the
Yeah.
offload. Now, if I had something like an
Yeah. Yeah.
NAS,
Yeah.
that would be a different way to do it, or a server
Yeah.
sitting out there somewhere that I could sync it to. I could see maybe syncing or moving files on an automated basis to something like Dropbox, and then, if possible, within Hazel, automatically change it to an offline only file. Something like that. That would be
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
use of it as well. But that's an incredible find, and I know it's one that you or someone else has mentioned in our essential apps in the past. So great pick.
Oh yeah. And I know I'm pretty sure I haven't. And I think there are other podcasts out there, like I think Automators or Mac Power Use or whatever, and what I've covered in Hazel, and the well runs pretty deep. You can There's quite a bit you can do with it that I didn't even go into, but yeah, no, I definitely recommend it.
Well, yours tended to lean a little bit more towards the functional, the programmatic. Maybe I might
Yeah,
even go so far as to say the pro level. Mine tended to lean a little bit more towards the simple, including my final pick, which I'm going to get to in just a moment. But I did want to mention I brought another 16 choices. We've just gone through five. I brought another 16
wow.
choices to the table here. You mentioned a truckload. I don't know what that represents, but
I don't have that many.
we're probably, these are apps that are essential, but maybe not quite as essential to my daily usage as some of the ones I've listed today. But with 16 more choices, whatever, however many more choices you have, the thought occurred to me we could do another episode. Or
Yeah,
what if over the course of, say, the next year, each episode we bring or talk about another essential app, another app that's essential to us? We'll just mention one. And
that's a
and
good idea.
if that's a good way to wrap up any given episode, I I I can't think of a better way to do it than that.
No, I can't either. I think that's
Yeah.
terrific,
And
actually.
we have some great choices. And some of these I know we've recently talked about. So
Yeah,
yeah, none of these are as essential. Some of them we've even mentioned today. Some of them we've mentioned. I know we've mentioned last episode and episodes around it. But if we just talk about some of the tools that we use on a regular basis that are essential to us, I think there might be some great choices in there for folks to pick up on over the course of, yeah, say the next year or so. That's 16. That's about the
yeah,
next year. Yeah.
yeah,
We could either bring we
yeah,
could try to
yeah. No,
we
that
could
would
try
be
to
good.
be a little bit more reserved in our descriptions and not talk as long about each one. But if we
Right.
could we could each bring one to the table on future episodes, or just bring one. Maybe you do one episode, I do one another episode, and we just go from there and kind of have an. It,
Yeah,
it truly will be an annual list consisting of every episode going
yes.
forward. But I
Going
have one
forward, no,
more.
that's a great idea.
I have one more, and this is definitely something unique to Mike, I think. Although I feel as if there's a lot of folks out there who could probably use this, yourself included, maybe. You may already be using something like this. But I often do work for clients and for myself where I'm doing layout work, whether it's in a desktop publishing app like Affinity Publisher, or whether it's a website, and I need text. I need something to mimic the look and feel of English. And the most common way to do that is with something called lorem ipsum text. Now, this is something that goes
Yes.
back in the publishing industry for years and years and years. It's completely made up. It may look like Latin, it may look like some foreign language, but it's completely made up. And one of the
Right.
benefits of lorem ipsum text is that it flows very much like standard English flows.
Yeah.
And There's variations of it out there, but one of the neat things about lorem ipsum text is that you can use a little bit or a lot of it, and uh, you can give yourself a good feel for what a layout, whether it's online layout or a printed layout, is going to look like. And again, this goes back years and years and years. This is not just something new to the computer industry. This goes back ages. Um,
Yeah.
Filler text. That's what it is. It's filler text. Rather than trying to
Yeah.
find something that actually, rather than writing the text, or rather than trying to find something that actually looks and reads like English, you can use lorem ipsum text. And for many years, I used an app called Little Ipsum. And Little Ipsum would sit in the menu bar, and you would click on it, and it would say, copying one word, two word, three word, four word, five words, one sentence, two sentence, three sentence, four sentence, one paragraph, two paragraph, three paragraph, four. And when you got to the point, as you watched it go, when you got to the point where you said, okay, that's how much text I need, you would click and it would put that into your clipboard. And then you could go to your layout and you could paste it, and boom, there's your lorem ipsum text. Well, that's a little tedious, as you might imagine. You have to sit there and wait for it to
Yeah.
say five words, three sentences, two paragraphs, whatever.
Three
And
paragraphs.
one of the sad things about Little Ipsum is it's not really developed anymore. It still works. You can still get it. You can still find it, but it's not really developed anymore. So I thought maybe I could find an alternative. There's publishing apps will often include lorem ipsum text that you can just drop into your document. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure Adobe does that. I'm certain Affinity does that. I'm certain Affinity does that with Affinity Publisher. But anyway, you can find lorem ipsum text. You can just search Google and say, "Show me lorem ipsum text," and you can get paragraphs and paragraphs of it. And it differs based on where
Yeah.
you're getting it from, but you can find it and you can use it. But having a tool at the ready that allows me to grab it on the fly is great. And Little Ipsum served that purpose. But when I needed to find a replacement, one of the best options I found is very similarly named Tiny Ipsum. And Tiny Ipsum improves upon Little Ipsum in that when you click the icon in your menu bar, and again, it's a menu bar app, when you click the icon, it you don't have to wait for it to cycle through everything. You can simply drag or move your cursor down through the menu that appears when you click the icon and highlight what you want. If I want five words, if I want four sentences, if I want four paragraphs, and
Oh,
choose
that's
how
nice.
much or how little text you want, click, and again, it goes to your clipboard and then you can paste it into your document. Super, super simple app. There's not a whole lot to say about it. Tiny Ipsum, however, has some neat little tricks up its sleeve. One is that you can choose different presets for the text. So you can go with traditional lorem ipsum, or you can go with text that is themed
Oh,
around
that's cool.
coffee. It's themed around coffee, bacon, corporate
Oh, that's
speak,
cool.
cupcakes, cheese, alien language, or Sagan. So if you choose
Carl Sagan.
Sagan and you go up to the menu and you cycle down, the first paragraph is going to read, by finite but unbounded, bearable astonishment calls to us one sunrise, something incredible. So it's Carl Sagan speak, which is just awesome. And then the other thing you can do is you can change
Yeah.
the style. You can have blue, purple, pink, red, orange, whatever, or you can do what's called tricolor. And I like tricolor because when I click on the menu, single words are in blue, sentences are in red, and paragraphs are in purple. So I can visually know what I'm selecting without having to pay a whole lot of attention to it. I just know if I'm selecting purple, I'm selecting paragraphs. If I'm selecting blue, I'm selecting words. And you can completely control what
That's totally
colors
cool.
appear, which is totally, totally cool. And of course, all the usual stuff applies. You can choose how big or how small you want the menu. You can have normal or compact menu displayed to you. You can preview the labels on the buttons as because they call them buttons in the menu that appears. You can adjust the presets. You can change what words appear within the preset. You can take words out of it. You can even add your own preset to it if you want to. And then you can adjust the styles and change the colors. So under tricolor, I actually changed the default tricolor were not the colors I wanted. So I changed the colors to be the blue, red, and purple that I wanted them to be. So if you have a need for something like lorem ipsum text, and if you need something free and easy to run, but super highly functional, and by the way, a little fun. I mean, coffee, Sagan. If you want to have lorem ipsum text that has a little meaning to it rather than looking like fake Latin, you can do it, and you can do it with Tiny Ipsum. So highly recommended. You can get it in the Mac App Store. I'll also put a link to it in the show notes directly to the developer site. And it is actually tinyipsum.com. So that is my final pick, Eric. A little simpler apps. Yours are a little bit more complex apps. But like I said at the beginning, whether it's Launchbar or Typinator, Choosy, or Tiny Ipsum, there should be something in here for everyone. And Eric has just disappeared again. So I think that is my cue to say that that's going to do it for this episode of For Mac Guys Only and our 11th Essential Apps list. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, I do love to get your letters, so if you have any comments about the show, a tip to share, a software or hardware problem with your Mac, or there are any apps that you can't live without and feel should be on next year's list, be sure to leave your favorites in the comments of this week's show notes found at formacisonly.com, or drop me a line, mike@formacisonly.com. And be sure to subscribe to the show's YouTube channel at youtube.com/FMEOTV. Click that little notification bell so you can find out when we're going live, join the chat room, and catch all the behind-the-scenes stuff that doesn't make the final cut of the show. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Eric for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time. And I think I'm going to hang out here for just a minute. Just a brief, that's the wrap up of the show, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to hang out here for just a minute and see if Eric rejoins me, and then I can re-record the outro in case, wow, that's long again. Another long episode. I'm going to have to edit that one down in case he wants to record his glad to be here. Or I could take it from a previous week. Maybe I'll just wrap up. It's been a long recording session. So I'll say again, oh, there he is. I just said I was going to wait just a minute. I did the outro and I said I'm going to wait just a minute to see if you want to do your glad to be here.
Glad to be here. Yes, all right.
So I will say once again, thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Eric for joining me this episode.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time. Good timing. Cue the music.
Cue the music.